meeting of the Longmeadow Select Board. I'm going to read a script for remote Select Board meetings. This Select Board Chair, Tom Llcc. I'll be confirming that all members and persons participating on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mark Strange?
Here.
Yes. Stephen Morantz? Okay. Richard Foster?
Here.
Mark Cole?
Here.
Stephen Morantz trying to get through? Okay. Staff, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. Lynn Simmons?
Here.
Paul Pasterzik?
Here.
Debbie House?
Here.
Okay. And then anticipated speakers. Colvest?
Here.
I don't have the names. I know that our superintendent of schools, Marty O'Shea, are you here?
I'm here and I can hear you well.
Okay. And then there's two other folks. Someone else is joining you, the co-chair of the school committee. Is it Brian?
Correct, Brian. Yep.
Okay, you're here. Thank you. And then we have someone from the water committee or for the water support. They're going to check in with us later. And then, all right, so that's good. So this open meeting of the Longmeadow Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent.
So I'm muted.
What's muted?
Where's that?
Oh, here we go. Something changed. Okay. So this is the meeting of the Longmeadow Select Board. Yeah, folks may want to mute themselves if they're not in a speaking role. So we can get through this. We have a lot of business to conduct. We couldn't even fit everything on the agenda that we had discussed last week. So I'll ask people to, be brief in their comments and get through this. And it'll be easier if we don't have too many speakers going at once. Okay, and there is public comment, yes. Okay, the open meeting of the Select Board is conducted remotely with Governor Baker's order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings as such. The governor's order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Longmeadow Select Board is convening by telephone conference, video conference via Zoom, as posted in the town's website, identifying how the public may join. For resident comments, after announcement of the COVID-19 update, the general announcement, I'll afford public comment as follows. I will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once I have a list of all public commentators, I'll call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to share your screen or your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All the meeting materials for this meeting are available on the agenda posted on longmeadow.org. The public is encouraged to follow along with the posted agenda unless I note otherwise, which I will be doing often tonight. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the members, inviting each by name to provide comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage colloquially with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. All right, so with that, we will start with an update on the COVID-19 status in town, and I will turn it over to Town Manager Lynn Simmons.
Thank you. I will be providing tonight's COVID-19 update. Chief Dearborn is out of the area right now. As of earlier this afternoon, there were 2 active COVID-19 cases in the community. We have been receiving more complaints about groups playing basketball, not wearing a mask or social distancing. The Board of Health is meeting tonight in an emergency meeting to discuss a possible order to close the courts. The increased signage and education that we've done at the courts has not changed behavior. So unfortunately, we are looking at pursuing additional means to responsible behavior. The fire departments continue to be instrumental in providing support to all town departments, particularly in ordering and distributing PPE. All PPE orders are in and we have stabilized our supply of PPE. Fire department now has face masks with removable cartridges, replaceable cartridges that provide a better level of protection. It's an item that we were not able to access during the height of the outbreak, so we're glad to have those now. The COVID-19 compliance officer that we've hired is continuing to assist departments with reopening guidance and compliance efforts. The satellite office space in the community house is continuing to run. The adult center will remain closed until the new facility is ready. Greenwood Daycare will not reopen this fall. And right after my update, you will be getting an update from the school superintendent and the school committee vice chair to provide an update on the Longmeadow Public Schools reopening plans.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Does anyone on the select board have any questions regarding the COVID-19 report? We'll quickly go through.
Tom,
Yes.
just a quick, although Greenwood Center is closed, it will not be closed for the election, correct?
Correct. Thanks for bringing that up. Correct. At your last meeting or the meeting before, there was a vote to move the election to Greenwood Center so that we can space out the precincts better. We will be utilizing the entire building, both September 1st and November 3rd. Early voting is also going to be at Greenwood Center, but just on the adult center side. In our announcements a little bit later on, I will be just giving people the specific dates on early voting. They're also available on the website, longmeadow.org. And the town clerk and many other staff people in town offices have been busy getting ballots ready to mail out. We've got 3,400 requests for early voting ballots. And those are all going out in the mail. If you did request one and multiple members of your family have requested one, depending on the timing of your request being fulfilled, there may be a bit of a couple day delay between someone in your household receiving one and you receiving one. So just hang tight for a day or two. But if you don't get one and you did request one, you can certainly follow up with the town clerk for that.
Okay, great. Mark Strange, any comments?
No, I don't.
Okay. Let me just get going. We heard from Steve Morantz. Richard Foster?
No comments.
Okay. Mark Gold?
No questions.
Okay, great. So now we'll move on to our, well, we do have one announcement. Lynn, do you want to make that quickly?
Sure, just give me 1 second. Let me grab my paper.
Okay, sorry, I got you. Go off the note.
Okay, thank you. So just jumping off of what I was just saying, the vote by mail update, ballots for the September 1st state primary have started to mail out. Currently, it's just going to take a little bit of time for us to process all the requests, but if you and multiple members of your family request ballots, just give us a little bit of time if there's a delay for everyone in your household receiving one. We expect everything that we have on file to be mailed out in the next few days. And just again, if you have a question, you can call the town clerk's office, but it will take a day or two once we receive your request to get a ballot in the mail to you. The deadline to apply for a vote by mail ballot is August 27th. That is for the September 1st. The deadline to return that ballot is 8 o'clock on election day, Tuesday, September 1st. Ballots can be returned by mail in the postage paid pre-addressed envelope provided in the packet that's mailed out to you, or you can drop it off at Town Hall. There is a secure locked drop box right to the right-hand side of the front door. The voting location for the September 1st election and November 3rd election will be at Greenwood Center. A town-wide call to notify all residents will be done tomorrow night, and we will also follow up with a reminder about the voting location change the week before the election. And early voting is going to take place August 22nd through August 28th. This will be in the over 60 room at the Adult Center. Saturday, the 22nd will be 8 to noon. Sunday, the 23rd will be 9 to 1. Monday and Tuesday, so the 24th and 25th will be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Wednesday, the 26th will be 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Thursday, the 27th will be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And Friday, the 28th will be 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And for anybody trying to write that down, all of that is available on the town website and on our social media pages on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Is there any other announcements for how to do it, town? Okay, so then we'll move on to, it's great to have our superintendent of schools, Marty O'Shea here, and the vice chair of the school committee, Byron, to talk a little bit about the school reopening plan. And I don't know who wants to start first, but I will.
You're going to do public participation?
I will do that later. We'll do public participation right after this important announcement regarding the school reopening. So if you could just hold on a little bit. So Superintendent O'Shea?
Good evening, Select Board. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight and give you a broad overview of our reopening plans, and happy to answer any questions you might have. So the Vice Chair, Brian Monahan, and I are here. We can tell you a little bit about the current proposal and some of the contingencies that are built into that. As last, it was August 6th, the school committee took a vote, and that was a vote to bring us in line with the Department of Education requirement that a plan be submitted to the state by August 14th. The original date was the 10th. They moved that to the 14th. So I think the best way to describe our reopening is that it will be a phased-in hybrid model. And I think these are phrases that everyone seems to be comfortable with, but when we talk about a hybrid model, we're talking about an arrangement where half of our students would be with us for in-person learning on any given day. So the generally two cohorts, cohort A and cohort B, 50% in each roughly. Students in cohort A would attend on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday would be set aside as a cleaning day, and then cohort B would join us on Thursday and Friday. There's a couple of qualifiers to that general hybrid model. The plan is to offer full day experience to students, pre-K students, and a limited number of students with very intensive special education needs. So other than that, small group of students in pre-K and students with the intensive special education needs, students would attend school on a hybrid basis as part of one of the two cohorts. Now, I would also note that the school committee, to allow for sufficient time to make sure that we are ready for students to return for some amount of in-person learning, the school committee decided to sort of delay the first day of that hybrid learning model. So at the elementary level, the students will be involved in a remote learning plan from September 14th to September 21st. And on the 21st, they'll start their first day in the hybrid model. At the middle school level, students would be learning fully remote from the 14th to the 25th of September. And then on Tuesday, September 29th, students at the middle level would start with the first day of hybrid instruction. And then at the high school level, students would be fully remote from September 14th to October 2nd. And then the first day of any in-person learning for high school students would be Monday, October 5th. So that's a sort of a broad summary, I guess, of the reopening plan that was voted by the school committee on August 6th. I will note, it's very important to note that the school committee has made it clear in all of their meetings that that decision is subject to ongoing and continual review, and that the committee would consider moving to a more restrictive model if a number of contingencies aren't met. And those include the level, the health metrics that we continue to watch. We want to make sure that we have adequate and appropriate staffing. We want to be sure that we can maintain the 6-foot social and physical distancing plan. We want to make sure that we have a regular adequate supply of PPE, and that we're attentive to all the facility issues that allow for a safe reopening. So there's a number of factors that that sort of have to continually be met if we are to open for any amount of in-person learning. And I know the school committee, beginning tomorrow night, has asked us to sort of continually and regularly brief them and update them on our readiness to open under the voted hybrid model. And I think, again, speaking just move to a more restricted model if we could not maintain the health and safety expectations that we've set up for ourselves and that follow the guidance that we've received. So I want to note that I appreciate the participation of town officials. Nick Turgenis has done a great job assessing and improving ventilation systems. Chief Dearborn has been, it's like I might be buffering. Chief Dearborn has been fantastic in terms of helping us with the PPE and ordering the supplies that we need. And then he and Beverly Hirschhorn have been great sources of information in terms of helping us understand the local health metrics. So this doesn't happen without the involvement and support of key town officials. So I think it's important to recognize and thank them for their participation in this as well. So happy to go into further detail or answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, Superintendent, the only thing, you were muffled a little bit when you referred about the gentleman who helped with the ventilation. Maybe you could just repeat his name?
Sure, Nick Turgenis, your facilities director for the schools. He did an outstanding job of assessing and upgrading, if necessary, the ventilation systems. And so he's been a regular part of our reopening advisory task force. as have officials from the fire department. I think it was a great idea, a great move on the part of the select board to initiate appointing Andy Frazier as your COVID compliance officer. He's been a great resource to our administrative team as well. So thanks for the the level of participation and support that we've received from the town on our reopening.
Right, and as things proceed, if there's ever a point where you want to have us make an announcement at these meetings regarding changes, please get them through Lynn. Now, Bronwyn, Monahan, did you have anything to add?
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
No, other than the fact that we appreciate all the hard work of the superintendent and assistant superintendents and all the principals. They've been working diligently all summer to make this work, to try and get the students back to school safely. And we really appreciate that. The teachers have been working hard on professional development for the hybrid and remote learning, which is going to be very significant for the students, and people are really excited about that. And I would echo what Dr. O'Shea said, that we're monitoring things. It's still a couple weeks before the opening of school, so we'll continue to be diligent and get as much information as possible from Chief Dearborn and the Board of Health. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And so I'll just go through the board to see if there's any questions. Steve Morantz, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do, although really great job, tough job to be doing now. My question is in terms of what you guys are doing, how much is that is under local control and how much is that mandated by the governor?
That's a great question, Steve, and I'll try to answer without editorializing too much. But for most of May and June, we had heard that a great percentage of the direction that we would get on this would come from the state, and that they were going to be very prescriptive. Repeatedly, we heard the phrase that 85% of the reopening would be sort of directed by the state. That turned out not to be the case, and it's put school communities in a very difficult position to try to come up with their own sort of localized approach to this. So the Department of Education has been helpful in providing guidance, particularly as it relates to COVID-19 response protocols and facility safety. So there's been a lot of great guidance documents, but the decisions themselves have largely rested with local communities. And what was most problematic in my view is that the red, yellow, green health metric that you saw come out recently came out after many school committees had made their decisions. So I think, if I could rewind the clock, I'd have that health metric issued at a much earlier date so that committees could make even more informed decisions. But having said all that, the committee is not locked in. They're prepared to pivot if local can.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question, Steve.
Okay. Mark Strange?
Yeah, just kudos to Marty and Bronwyn and all your colleagues for doing such a great job. I can't imagine the discussions you guys had. I saw the one long meeting where you guys voted, and really thank you so much from as a resident for all your hard work. I know this was not an easy task. I do have one question. So I didn't see any discussion about kind of climate control and temperatures. So in the beginning of the school year, temperatures obviously tend to be warmer, but I don't think that HVAC systems will be running, will be circulating air. So my questions are, how do we, if we are going to, how do we cool kids or cool rooms in the beginning of the year, and how do we warm them up in the middle of the year?
So I think my understanding, Mark, and certainly these are questions that I always like to defer to folks with the technical backgrounds on these things, but my understanding is that that ventilation is perhaps more important than the temperature, and so many of our schools are not fully air conditioned. Glenbrook being one example, right? And so, you know, ventilation and air exchange become very critical, and opening windows is a really simple but very significant mitigation strategy. We also hope to purchase some tents for outdoor meetings, outdoor instruction. So whenever we can, getting kids outside will be a part of it. Of course, that's not a strategy we can rely on here in New England, but you know, as weather permits, we'd love to take advantage of opportunities for kids to be outside. So what Nick has done, what Nick Durganis and his team have done is basically, you know, maximize the fresh air exchange. I think when we get into the winter months, I think Nick will want to reassess that because, you know, opening the dampers and bringing in fresh air, you know, fully works in the early fall, but becomes, you know, creates some challenges in the winter. So I know that Nick will want to reassess that strategy as we get to the colder months.
Okay. Richard Foster, any questions?
No, I don't have any, Tom. Thank you.
Okay. And Mark Gold, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. Dr. O'Shea, you said that you had cohorts A and B. A would be in person Monday, Tuesday, B in person Thursday, Friday. What are A doing Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? What are B doing Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday?
So the expectation is that the students who are learning remotely can access the instruction that's happening for some students in person. So the B cohort, if it's out of school on Monday and Tuesday, the expectation would be that they can access the instruction. Now they can do that through the use of instructional technology. One of the advantages that we have here in Longmeadow is that our teachers are equipped with laptops, and we will get each teacher who needs it a tablet device. So between the two of those, they'll be able to make that connection to the kids who are learning remotely. There's also staff that can engage the remote learners. So the hope is that even for the kids who are in that remote cohort, that they can access instruction and sometimes even on a synchronous real-time basis.
Thanks. Another couple of questions is you said that, you know, you're going to monitor things and potentially, you know, become more restrictive if necessary. Is there any possibility of becoming less restrictive? And I guess part B of that question is, how long is this plan in place for? What's your review timetable? You know, can parents be assured that it's going to be this way through X date, or, you know, is this subject to ongoing changes?
I've seen districts sort of pick dates at which point they'll change to a different model or they'll reassess. That all seems a little bit arbitrary. I think the best approach is just to review it on an ongoing basis. And Mark, you can make a good point that I think if the created opportunities to return more students to learning, I think we'd want to take advantage of that. I think we all know though that that's dependent on the virus, and it's dependent on local health metrics, and it's dependent on what our Board of Health tells us. It's dependent on what guidance we get from the state. But if we have that chance, we would identify priority grades or priority groups of students for additional in-person learning. So it could be that the phase-in goes in the other direction on the backside of this pandemic. So as can do return to in-person learning. When that will be, you know, that's the crystal ball that we all wish we had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. And Superintendent, I did get a question. They said parents who opt out, we use the opt-out option for families. Can they continue past the October 5th phase-in as an opt-out?
Yeah, so we'll want to be respectful of parents that, for whatever reason, decide that their children won't participate in any in-person learning. We're referring to that group as Cohort C, and so that group will ask families to make a commitment sometime soon on their intentions there. But we also know that families can for very good reasons change what they think is best for their children. And so we would want to be respectful of that. So if a family starts out participating in the hybrid model and decides that it doesn't make sense for their children, then they can go into that fully remote cohort. Alternatively, if a family starts in the fully remote, all of the students, whatever cohort you're in, you're part of the Longmeadow community, you'll have access to Longmeadow instruction. I think going from a fully remote back into the hybrid model, that probably might take a little bit more time and require more adjustment. But to go from the hybrid model into the fully remote cohort C approach, that can happen fairly seamlessly.
Okay, and again, you know, in the talking I've done to students, usually this time of year, the last thing they're thinking of is like, oh, I gotta go back to school, you know. But this year, everyone seems to be very excited, you know, about seeing their friends, and they want to go back. And I know it wasn't an easy decision for the school board to come to this phase-in program, but you know, I know it's the outcome of a lot of work and a lot of thinking, and you know, we appreciate the work you've done, and I really appreciate the two of you coming here to share this, you know, with the select board, so that we're all on the same page. And you know, if you want to come back again, let us know. Otherwise, I guess we won't see you till budget time.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I appreciate the chance. Any chance to explain this to communities is welcome, and appreciate everybody's efforts, including the teachers. Their teachers are really anxious to come back as well. Understandably, they have some concerns that we need to address, but everybody across the board, teachers, students, administrators, we would love to get back, but obviously health and safety is the first priority.
Okay, well, great. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. We're going to move on the agenda to resident comments. And as we've said before, it's a 3-minute window. And so Lynn, do we have some folks who plan to say something? I know I heard from, so we saw Liz Bone wanted to speak.
We do. We have Martine, we have Liz Bone. I think it looks like we have Pete Landon.
Okay.
That's looks like all I have at the moment. You can either raise your hand or send me something in the.
Why don't we start with Liz Bone? If you could, we can unmute you and get you started. Thank you. And just your name and your address, please. Are you there, Liz?
Okay. Hi, sorry, I didn't realize I had to unmute myself.
Okay.
Liz Bone, 34 Elizabeth Circle. I just wanted to comment. I know that you guys are going to talk about the Charter Review Commission a little bit later on. And I just wanted to give my 2 cents, I guess. I was just looking back through my emails, and I noticed that we started our review commission, started the meetings back in 2017. And we worked for about over a year on going through recommendations and going through the charter line by line, just making a little, you know, clerical changes, and also really just looking at what the committees mean to Longmeadow at this point in time and how they differ from what they used to mean 10 years ago. And I just wanted to say that all of us came to the same conclusion, that we believe that our form of government does work for Longmeadow, and it gives our residents a say in things that mean a lot to our residents. For example, we have our petitions that kids and parents get behind that think they're very meaningful to the town. And I'm not sure how that would work in a different form of government, especially if it was not led by individuals who have the same goals for the whole community. And I just wanted to also talk about just for a second that when we had our committee, we reached out to all the committees in town to give their any information or changes that they wanted to see. We also did invite the select board to come and give us anything that they wanted to see. But at that point, the select board, I think, and our committee, they decided that they would review it after we gave our recommendations. So they felt at that point they did not need to come and speak to our committee. And I have emails about that, and I just wanted to set the record straight on that. So I guess that's it.
All right. Well, Liz, thank you very much. Okay.
You're welcome.
And our next speaker would be Martin or Martine. Your name and your address, just unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name is Martin Hernandez. I live on 299 Maple Road. I am a resident and parent of kids here at Longmeadow. I'm also here just to, if I'm allowed, I just wanted to introduce a group of residents and parents called LARC. They're called the Longmeadow Anti-Racist Coalition. And our mission is basically to dismantle the structures that have caused and perpetuated systemic racism in our town, and to replace them with systems that encourage and sustain demonstrable diversity and equity. Ours is a multi-pronged approach that draws on the diverse interests, experience, and expertise of our members to include activism, legislative engagement, and educational initiatives and reform. So this group is made up of about 330 residents. I just wanted to introduce the group to the select board and any other community members that might be on the call. And I also wanted to express my interest in being part of the Anti-Racism Coalition Task Force. I understand that there will be a formal process where people who are interested in participating will be writing letters, I guess, to the select board or the town manager. But I just wanted to express my interest. I have another colleague here from the group that hopefully will also put her name forward. She has a lot of policy experience. So I think as one of the few Latino families here in Longmeadow, I would be very interested in participating in the coalition. So that's all. I wanted to motion the resolution that created a space for this task force. There's a lot of work to be done, but I'm very appreciative that this happened. So thank you very much.
Great. And Martine, we usually don't talk too much, but is there any way for people who wanted to join LARC to make a connection? What's the best way to find you? Do you have a web page or?
There is a Facebook page, and if I don't know if I'm allowed, but I can always put my email in the chat. I don't know if that's very permitted, but.
Yeah, I think that'd be all right. Yeah, and the chat would be fine. And then, so they look on Facebook under LARC.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, Tom.
All right. And next we have Peter Landon. That's just your name and your address. Start with that.
Pete Landon, 5 Meadowbrook Road, Longmeadow. I was calling on the same subject that phone was regarding the charter and the original charter commission, and then I was on the charter review recently, and I did a minority report on the last one, which was to take a look at the form of government, because under a charter review you don't have the power to do a look at you wordsmith the existing charter or make some workflow improvements. I think that I see it's on your agenda to look at the various forms of government. And I think if we do, we have a great potential to improve the efficiency of our decision-making and to improve more informed decision-making. I don't see that happening at in one body, which is the conversations at town meetings. So that's my focus. But I would like to thank you for the opportunity. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you very much. Lynn, has anyone else got in touch with you about speaking?
That was all I had so far. I did just want to add, if you're watching us on YouTube and you want the email address for how to get in touch with Martine for information on LARC, you can feel free to call me at the town manager's office or email me, because you won't be able to see the chat through YouTube or if you're streaming it on LCTV right now. Just wanted to make sure people that were watching in other methods have that information as well.
Okay, thank you. And I know that Mr. Berman is here. He's an interview for the Conservation Commission, and I think I'd like to try to do that right now. Mr. Berman, could you just unmute yourself and tell us your interest in serving the town?
Sure. My name is Roman Berman. I'm at 69 Canterbury Lane. I have plenty of experience with efficiency. As a matter of fact, that's what I do currently. I work with the utilities to generally get businesses, commercial, industrial, and municipalities to be more efficient, and I'd love to use my knowledge base to help out Longmeadow. I've moved here about a year ago. I love the town. I definitely want to become a little bit more involved, especially with everything going on in the world now.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the select board that have any questions for Roman?
Yeah, Tom, I do.
Yes, Mark, go.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Berman, for replying. I was wondering if you had a chance to either attend any Conservation Commission hearings, look at the notes, talk to, I guess it's Llcc, who's been our chair of the Conservation Committee, or anything that you've done to maybe familiarize yourself with what they do?
Not as of yet. I actually came across this. Wow, just time right now seems a little bit difficult to figure out, every day being the same. But I came across this about a week ago or so, and then I reached out, I guess, applied, if you will, and I just found out about this meeting a couple of days ago as well, and so I haven't had the opportunity to look any more into it.
I just suggest Llcc is a great resource. He's, I think his email's on our website. If you need it, just let me know. We've got his, for Debbie House at our office has his information too. It's maybe worth reaching out to him.
Fantastic, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the select board? Okay. So, Roman, thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
We appreciate it. We will get back to you. We'll process this, and then we'll take a vote at probably our next select board meeting. So, and then we'll get back to you.
Great.
Do you know what the term of service is for this board?
No, I do not.
Okay, so I'm sure Deb House will let us know, and we'll fit you in. Okay, thank you very much, and good evening. Okay, so we're going to, we have a couple of folks, some lawyers and so forth online, so we're going to move over and come back to select board comments and the town manager's report. And I'd like to move to the Cold Vest Longmeadow LLCC agreement for roadway improvements and maintenance. We've all received a document on that included diagrams. And then in the last, we also received from Lynn Simmons for tonight's agenda, an item through Gmail that talks about the joint select board planning board meeting that talks about the same project. And this was dated May 15th, 2017. So there's a project that's been around a little bit. And so I guess we'll start with Colvest. I don't know who wants to, just introduce yourself. And
I'll start the conversation. Jeffrey Roberts, I'm a Longmeadow resident and attorney for Colvest.
Mhm.
And I believe what you have from Lynn is a draft of an agreement, well, it's entitled Agreement for Roadway Improvements and Maintenance. And this is a draft that has been developed initially by Colvest and me and I. And Jesse Belcher-Timmy has looked at it. Lynn has looked at it. Actually, this started before Lynn was the town manager, but it got more recent attention since she's been here. Also with me is Frank Colacino, who is the principal of Colvest, who's available to answer questions, and one of his engineers, Peter Lapointe, who I believe will be showing up here. And he's the specialist on all the diagrams and can answer any direct questions about the project, or specific questions, I should say. But as an overview, Colvest owns the shopping center at the corner of Bliss Road and Longmeadow Street, Route 5. And on the Bliss Road side, it has Fred Astaire Dance as a tenant and maybe someone else. On the Longmeadow Street side, it was occupied by Hampton Savings Bank primarily and by an optical shop, optometrist. So there was a financial services through the bank, and there was professional services through the optometrist. The bank has since left. Colvest has an interest in totally upgrading the building, which is something, in my opinion, Colvest does very well on all its properties. And the reason for this agreement is that what you think of as the parking area in front of that building as the parking space for the building is actually a public way. It's a street for the town. So what Colvest would like to do is they'd like to redesign the layout of that, of what is the street together with what is its property to improve the parking, and also improve the street itself, because the town has not really, they've really deferred the maintenance to Colvest. So the lawn, the trees, the sidewalk, etc., has all been maintained by Colvest for quite a while. What Colvest would like to do at its expense is to redo the street, redo the sidewalk, create an opportunity for parking which is more suitable for a building like that with a few tenants in it. The tenants are the same basic category of tenants that has been there before: financial services, professional office of one kind or another. It's not a property that will, I'm sure the planning board will make sure of this, will not have a Starbucks there, will not have as it is on the Bliss Road side. A question that's been bounced back and forth between myself and town council and Ms. Simmons is what are the arrangements for parking? In other words, I don't think anyone disagrees on the town side, that since the town is not spending any money, all the town is doing is making sure that the project is done the way it's designed to be done. Well, okay, I don't know who that was. That's my friend Walter. But the project will be done under the cooperation with the town. So what is designed is attached to this agreement. And Colvest will pay all the expense. So this is no expense to the town. We think it's good for the property. We think it's good for the town. And that's why it's been proposed. I've been told by my clients that starting some time ago, the plans that are attached to this agreement were circulated throughout the town engineering departments. and have been vetted by them. But you will, of course, learn that yourselves. But I think that's already been done. So what we're looking for really on the Colvest side is the select board's approval to enter into this agreement. And there are only two things that are on the draft that Lynn gave you that's attached to this agenda. And I invite her to correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things is that there's a blank here as to when Colvest will begin the project. In other words, there's a time frame here that Frank and Peter, I think, can lay out for you. The other thing is the Lynn added to the draft that I had prepared that Colvest will put up some collateral, some indemnification for the cost of the project. And I think the objective is that the town does not want to have this project get underway and abandoned, and then who has to pay for have it be finished. So she put a clause in here, it's paragraph 8. It deals with performance bond or a cash bond. And I emailed her and asked her if we could include in there an option for Colvest to put up a letter of credit, which she and I discussed in an email. And she emailed back to me that she thought that would be fine, but it's not in this draft. And I would just ask that as far as Colvest is concerned, the only part of this draft that you have that we would like to just edit is add in there in paragraph 8 that a letter of credit is also a suitable form of collateral. And that's our story.
Okay, well, great, thank you. Now, we do have a town's attorney, Jesse Belcher-Timmy. And Jesse, do you have any first, review of what was presented?
I think Jeff outlined the history and the current status pretty well. I mean, I looked at this. I think my first conversations about this might go back to even Stephen Crane's tenure here. So it's been batted about in a lot of different forms. And there's been a lot of people, town department heads and employees and officials that have looked at it as well and given their sort of area of expertise. So, I mean, I think mostly what's in here now is really a matter of sort of just a policy decision by the select board. I think that for the most part, what's in here is at least acceptable to people who would have to deal with different aspects of it, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions if you have any of me.
Okay, so we'll, maybe we'll go through the select board. Mark Gold, any questions that you have?
I have a lot of questions. Is this for our attorney, or is this for Attorney Roberts, or is this just in general?
I think you could ask either one of the attorneys questions.
Okay, I was on the select board back in May of 2017 when this first came up. I still have the diagrams, which are a whole lot easier to read than the ones we've got. So I guess my questions, and this may be for their engineer, is this design substantially, or in what ways may it be different from what we've got in 2017? I couldn't notice anything, but I just literally couldn't expand those online documents large enough to see them. So my first question is this different from that design?
No, the design is exactly the same. This is Peter LaPointe from Colvest.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, at the time, and I actually asked Debbie House to send select board members the minutes from that meeting back in 2017, because we have 2 new select board members. One of the questions we had was the movement of the bus stop, and is the bus stop going to be moved? Is the sidewalk going to be moved? That kind of stuff. And it appears that since none of that's changed, it looks like the bus stop is going to stay, but I can't see that on the design. But the biggest thing is we're losing the green space of the wall. Is that true, Mr. LaPointe, that we're losing all that green space?
You're losing the green space. You're not losing the wall. The wall gets reconstructed and the bus stop remains.
Okay, so So we're losing that green space, which means we're losing a couple of shade trees. And back in 2017, Colvest offered to replace shade trees elsewhere in town as a replacement for the shade trees they're taking down. I didn't see this agreement.
You're losing one shade tree, which is immediately in front of our building. And what we had offered to do was replace a tree that was fairly derelict immediately across the street. That tree has since fallen down and the stump's been ground. So they've prepared the space for a new tree.
Right, but you know, I actually took some videos at the time, Peter, and I think there's a second tree. It's closer to the gas station, but it looks like it's going to be taken out too. There were, you know, from my perspective, there were two trees. But the bigger question is, where's the planning board on this? Has this gone before the planning board? Because back in 2017, we said it needs to go before the planning board at some point to get their assessment. And, you know, at the time, it was actually a joint meeting of the planning board and the select board, and the planning board folks had far more questions than we had. So I guess, Mr. Roberts, has this gone before the Longmeadow planning board yet?
You know, you're getting into, now you're testing my memory. I believe we went before the planning board on some issues regarding the building. I think it was primarily signage. And the planning board wanted they required the Hampton Savings Bank sign to be removed, and other signs to be removed, and that's all been done. I think Walter may be on this call. I'm not sure. I see his name here. I believe when we discussed the future of the building, the understanding between the planning board and the building commissioner was this is not a change in use, and there are no external renovations, which those issues are the jurisdiction of the planning board. So if you don't have a change in use, you don't have any external renovations, then you don't need planning board approval. As far as what is done on the town property, I think that's the jurisdiction of the select board.
Thank you for that clarification. You know, because I think the planning board did weigh in on some other things in the past that may not have been appropriate, but I know they did. So the question about the parking is, there's no question that is and will remain town property. And I think people in town need to understand that, you know, the parking in front of what we'll call the old Rinaldi's or the CVS there, that's primarily town land. The parking in front of the First Church is town land. The parking in front of St. Andrew's Church is all town property. So I guess
St. Mary's, Berkshire Bank.
Right, that's all right.
And also the shopping center at the corner of across from Pleasant View Avenue.
Right. It's the bank there, the Berkshire Bank, right?
Yeah, but across the street from the Berkshire Bank.
Oh, right.
That's all town property.
Right, and so, you know, there's a precedent that we've done this before, but the issue may be more of if it's town property, you know, can the tenants regulate parking there? And the answer had been in the past, at least by the select board, is if it's parking, it's public parking. And, you know, I'm not sure people want to park there to walk the Big Y, but, you know, when that bus stop was active, you know, it could be that people go there, park there all day and take the bus downtown or take a bus to work. And I just think people ought to be aware that that's a possibility. So, you know, I just wanted to make a comment about that it is public property, and the bigger thing is public liability. Is that something that we're concerned about? We've got, you know, just like we did in front of the community house, we now have a situation where angled in parking, two cars, opposite directions can back up, theoretically back into each other. Is that a liability for the town that we've maybe creating by having those parking spaces? Unlike the area in front of the community house, this is significantly narrower, and there's not a whole lot of space in the middle of those two angled in parkings. So I just thought I'd point out some of those and ask some of those questions. I believe the building needs an upgrade, but I'm not sure how much we want to lose our green space, or how the town ought to be compensated for losing that green space. Thank you.
I think one thing I'll point out is that it is a public way. There's no question about it. And town council and the town manager and I talked about that. And we changed this agreement from when it started, when Steve Crane was here, to accommodate those concerns. So there's no dispute about that. But I will point out that on town property, the town can also set limitations on parking. So if you go to the little strip mall at the corner of Route 5, and I should know the name of the street because I used to ride my bicycle on it every day, but there's the pharmacy, and there's the little antique store, furniture store, and that sort of thing. There are signs there that says 2-hour parking limit. And I think somebody, and on a street as well, and I think somebody at that shopping plaza said, hey, listen, we don't want people parking here and taking the bus for the day. And the town at that time said, okay, we'll help you out, we'll put up these signs. We're not asking the town to do that, but just because it's public doesn't mean that there's no management of the parking. So it's not, this agreement does not allow, it recognizes in a general way, and this is of course something that we can, obviously the Colvest and the town will play by ear, but Colvest has had signs there for years on that property that says this parking is for the customers of the building. We're not even talking about that. We're just saying that in this agreement, Colvest can put up signs suggesting a term of parking. I think as a practical matter, people seeing all those parking spaces across the street from St. Mary's are not likely to look at this little street as an obvious parking lot. It's really so obviously connected with that building that I think it'll work out fine, like it has been all along. But the way it is now is really not a traffic engineer or a parking lot specialist would not look at that and say, oh, you're doing a great job with this street, Longmeadow. So I think we're not really changing much of what is there now other than improving it.
Okay, we'll move on from there. Richard Foster, do you have any questions or comments?
The only thing I'd have, Tom, I asked Lynn. Lynn, does the fire department take a look at this for clearances and all on their equipment?
They have not reviewed this agreement, at least in the time that I've been here. I don't know if they reviewed it previously. The town engineer has reviewed it.
Okay, because it's kind of hard to see from the print we've got, but I'll assume then all the clearances are up to current codes.
Yes, they are.
Right, that's the only question I have.
Okay, thank you. Mark Strange.
Thanks, Tom. I don't really have any questions. I do think this is a good project. That area and those storefronts have at times been vacant, and it's a visible area of town. I think the vacancy of the storefront has been kind of a drag for Longmeadow Street, and I know Colvest does a nice job with their development, considering that they're going to be making the improvements and taking on the liability on their own dime, and indemnifying the town of any responsibilities. I think this is a good project for the town.
Okay, thank you. Steve Morantz.
Yes, I have a couple questions in terms of where traffic is coming from. Is it sort of this one-way little entrance from, you go past the mobile station and park there? Is that what's going to happen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so unless I'm wrong, I believe Fred Astaire has left the premises. Is that correct?
They have.
So basically, with the exception of the new tenant, whose timing was really not particularly good, that building has been pretty much, except for good old Fred, that building has been vacant for 7 years, pretty much.
No, I think it's less than 7. My memory was.
Well, I mean, we walk by there. It's been. So is the anticipation that by, repaving the road and making some parking spaces, this is now going to make this a more attractive place? That, I mean, Hamden Savings Bank left a long time ago, and the Vision Place left a long time ago,
Right.
and has been empty, maybe not 7 years, but a long time ago. And I'm wondering why, what this is going to do. Is this going to help get tenants in there that haven't, they're going to show up now because there are a couple of parking spaces and the road's been repaved and a little green space is gone. I'm not sure what this is going to do for everybody here.
The road and the sidewalk today are in terrible condition. That's what started this process.
Oh, but the sidewalk was replaced. The sidewalk was, at least on the Bliss Street side, they actually, there's been all these improvements. I mean, as I said, we walk this street pretty much every day, and that sidewalk was fixed.
Right, and we did that. Now there's this section in front, which is city sidewalk, and it's a town sidewalk, and it is the primary sidewalk in that section of Longmeadow Street for pedestrians, and it's in rough shape. The driveway and parking area, the road and parking area are also in rough shape. And what we hope to do is not only improve their condition, but also add to the parking count. And that has been one of the questions raised by everyone we've shown the property to. Where do I park? Where do my customers park? Where do my employees park? And the employees historically have parked in the public lot across the street from the church.
And I assume that would not change.
No, I don't think it would, except that it would be fewer people, I think, than parking on Bliss Street.
Okay, but God knows when this was, 2016, 2013, but when the Vision Store was there and Hamden Savings Bank was there, people did manage to park and walk into the buildings to get to what they had to do. That is.
But you notice they aren't there anymore.
Well, Hamden Savings Bank is a whole other story altogether. And I mean,
sure it is.
Yeah, if you're going to make the case that they left because of parking, that would be, I would consider that to be a stretch. But the sidewalk isn't going to go. The sidewalk's going to remain exactly where it is, correct?
Yes.
In front of this building. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So there's a couple of things. One is the Route 5 is eventually going to be redone. We have plans to do the section from Bliss, no, not Bliss, sorry, but from Converse Street down to Forest Park, into the entrance of the town. Eventually, we're going to be doing the rest of Longmeadow Street. And so at that point, the street will probably be widened a little bit, and they'll be putting bike lanes in. And in the planning of this parking area, has that been taken into consideration?
The only impact their widening and reconstruction would be on the handicap ramp location at the corner of Bliss and Longmeadow Street. And there may very well at that point in time be an objection by DOT's planners to the current driveway out onto Bliss Street. The first thought is that process, that design process, has barely begun. So we have a number of years before we get to that point. And at that point in time, the driveway may not be an issue, and they may be willing to accept the handicap ramp back where the sidewalk is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll also point out that that was an issue that was brought up at one of our meetings between Steve Crane and Lynn Simmons. And we actually added a clause to this contract that was not in an earlier version that specified that the risk is coal vests if the state and the town have to make changes to the roadways that are detrimental to the project. And the coal vests is willing to accept that.
Okay. All right.
Tom, can I add something, Tom?
Yeah, please.
The project, the TIP project that's being referred to, the second round of a 4-year plan funding was not approved at town meeting. So that project is slightly on hold right now. We will certainly be pursuing other funding mechanisms, but that did delay our efforts.
Okay. Because I would think that, what's going to happen at this intersection, this corner, is going to be somewhat similar to what will happen at the intersection of Converse and Longmeadow Street. And so has that been taken into consideration, because I don't know how much adjustment, there is a stone wall, a retaining wall going up, and there'll be sidewalks. And so have you guys, is the planners looked at what could happen, further up Longmeadow Street and designing this?
Well, we did look at what the impact would be, and the impact would be to the sidewalk that serves the bus stop and the bus stop.
Okay.
It would not, the retaining wall is pretty much going to remain where it is. We can't widen the parking area without disturbing the retaining wall, which is the reason we're proposing to take it out and reconstruct it. You can't run machines that close to it and leave it intact. It would it would collapse. But the retaining wall will be in exactly the same location.
Right. So if
Mr. LaPointe's point,
I think I'm still talking, Mark. So
what do you mean no talking? Wait a second. What do you mean no talking?
I know. I say I'm still talking.
You made an error.
I'm still talking questions.
His comment was an error. He said that the bus stop and the sidewalk will remain, and there's no certainty of that at all.
No, I was going
to want to move it to the east by 4 feet.
I'm glad we're on the same track now, because that doesn't make sense. Because we have to have a sidewalk there and a bus stop, and so that means the retaining wall may have to move, and it should not be at the town's expense to move that. And so I'm just not sure, we have to have a definite feeling from the board that won't become a problem, it may be several years from now.
Oh, the retaining wall is your retaining wall.
But you're right? Moving it.
He's not, Peter, you're not moving it, right? You're just replacing it.
We're not moving it. We're taking it apart and then reconstructing it in exactly the same location.
Oh, well, let me look at the plan again. I guess
But making it higher.
No.
Correct?
Yeah.
It seems to me you've got to, if you're leveling off and putting a barrier up on top for parking right now. I mean, I've got pictures. I can show them to you if you want me to share them with you. But right now, the grass slopes down to the wall from that what you call a roadway. So if you're going to level that off, you're going to have to raise the wall. I mean, that's just walk the area. I've taken pictures of it. I've seen it. You're going to have to raise the wall. And I understand, and that's part of the deal. But all I'm saying is that you may put money into the wall and find that 5 years from now, the wall needs to move, 4 feet to the east because the road's being widened. And it's the town's wall, and town may do that. That's part of the clause that's in there, is it's being done at Colvest's risk that wall has to move and you lose that row of angled in parking up above.
We would.
Right. I mean, that's how I read the agreement, that you're taking that risk.
That's correct. That's correct. And and Mark, that's what it says in that agreement.
Right.
That's why it's in there.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad you clarified that.
Can I just clarify something real quick, Tom, just because Mark was bringing that up? So the language does say that the town will sort of make its best efforts to maintain the improvements in the event the state. So town agrees to use its best efforts to preserve the modifications to access and parking. So the state may come in and say that there needs to be changes here, but the town does agree to sort of try to defend whatever work Colvest does on the site. So it's not quite as quick with this language as sort of, jumping ship and saying we're doing what the state wants to do. So the language it's written is a little more, town's going to side with Colvest to try to keep the conditions after the improvement.
Okay, Jesse, we did get a question from Peter Landon also. You, it said, what are the draw provision terms on draws on the letter of credit? It's contingent or language on what constitutes performance.
This agreement just mentions letter of credit, just like it mentions performance bond. And the details of how that letter will be written, it'll be an irrevocable on-demand letter of credit, but it's going to be a letter of credit that's going to be approved by the town, basically. But this agreement is not that specific. But in my opinion, the town, Jesse, will say, okay, if we're going to take a letter of credit, it's got to be written to say that if it's on Tuesday and we've decided that we need to be reimbursed, we call the bank and say, send us $50,000, and the bank sends them the money. Which is, Peter, that's basically the way you want them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I meant Peter Landon.
Oh, Peter Landon, yeah.
Our banker, he's our banker.
Okay, yeah, all right.
So can I just ask a question of our town's attorney?
I'm going to finish up and then I can open it up to other people on the board. So the last thing I want to say is that, when this came through in 2017, I was very supportive of it. And I still think that it would be great to get this building online, to have businesses in there actively. And so, it sounds like you've done a lot of work to figure out some of the complications. And I know this has not been an easy discussion, but I appreciate your having thought about this ahead of time. And so now, Mark Gold, you had another comment or question.
Yeah, this is just for our town's attorney. There's clauses in there because, Jesse, you commented about the town's obligation or what the town won't do with the state, but there's also a clause in there that says, the town manager approval shall not be unreasonably withheld. What does that mean, and how is that enforced, and who decides what's reasonable and unreasonable when it comes to recommendations? I mean, is that putting an undue burden on our town manager and on the select board?
I mean, that's a pretty typical phrase, and obviously it's a little bit vague, and it's the subject of litigation pretty regularly, but it's all fact specific. So I can't remember the context of where that is specifically, but basically what it is if Colvest is giving the town, in this case the town manager as an individual, sort of control and oversight of specifics related to a project, as long as what Lynn is conveying on behalf of the town is reasonable, then that's okay and it's defensible. You can't give the town, or Lynn in this case, sort of a veto power to kill the whole project where you're giving her some discretion and control. What arises to the level of unreasonable is different in every case, and sometimes it takes a judge or a jury to decide that, but most of the time people can work that out.
Thank you.
Any other questions from folks on the board? I did have one other question, and this came before us and this was approved, and then nothing happened. And so what was the story? How come there's been such a delay on this project?
I don't believe the board voted approval that night to allow us to go forward.
Oh, okay.
What board did was authorize the town manager to put together this kind of a document.
Oh, okay.
So we never said yes, we never said no. We said, let's look, because all we had were a couple of drawings and photographs or artist renderings. So, I think this is the outcome of that 2017 meeting 2 years later.
Yeah, but 3 years, I mean, that's a long time. It takes that long?
Tom, is it appropriate to ask what the planning board sees their role as? We know we heard from Attorney Roberts what he thinks the planning board's role is. But is it appropriate to ask the planning board? Because they were very active in that meeting 3 years ago. I mean, I have notes that talk about Bruce Colton's comments and Walter Gunn's comment. You know, there are several people who made comments from the planning board. So they believe they had a role then. I'd be interested to know what they think now.
Well, we do have Walter Gunn has been with us. I don't know if he's still here, if he would want to make any comments.
Tom, I have a comment.
Yes, Richard Foster.
Yeah, you had mentioned about the design of that roadway down there, and Lynn was right. It was disapproved at town meeting with no protest. That intersection is going to have a decrease in traffic flow as soon as DPW moves out of there. So there's going to be a downgrading, if nothing else, of the traffic flow pattern in that area. So I don't think you'll see anything close to what took place at Converse, which is a major artery in its intersection with Route 5. Bliss Road will likely forever remain where it's at, or actually lose traffic ADTs on that section.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comments? Any weighing in by anyone else from the planning board?
Yeah, I'm here, Walter.
Thanks, Walter.
Yeah, I thought, my recollection was that Jeff Roberts is correct. We really were looking at signage. I don't think there was, the minor changes to the facade of the facility was minimal. I remember Peter LaPointe was in on the meetings, and it was pretty minor changes. I think the big issue was what we're facing today, and was the redesign of the driveway, the fire department involvement and fire safety, getting in and getting out. And I think the town manager, Stephen Crane, started to put a lot of pressure on a lot of improvements that I think Colvest was not willing to do. Jeff, is that correct? And I think you guys just said the hell with it. And we approved only one client, and that was the financial services thing, and we left the rest behind. Does that sound familiar?
I wasn't involved with what was going on with Steve Crane when he was there.
Okay.
But I do, you are correct that on the planning board side, there was a hearing on the tenant that's in there now, the financial services tenant that's in there now.
Right.
But it was not a hearing, that's what the hearing was about, the signage and the tenant.
Right.
It wasn't a hearing about what the select board should or shouldn't approve in terms of fixing the roadway and this plan. Isn't that correct, Walter?
That is correct. And again, it's complicated because it goes back to when you discuss Rinaldi's is a good example, because that plaza was the parking is owned by the town. So when it came to deciding what's off-street, on-street parking, what are the requirements,
right?
That became an issue between really the select board and the owner of the property. It's a very complicated piece of land, and it's also, I will say, back to the bus stop. It's been designated as what we call a transit-oriented development area. So it's a key public transportation hub because of Bay Path College proximity. So it's tricky, but I don't remember exactly what Stephen Crane was. Frank should remember this. Stephen was rather persistent about something that really, even I thought, was over the top on making you guys come into compliance to something. Do you remember, Frank?
What it was Steve Crane asked us to. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. Yep.
Okay. Steve Crane asked us to do a few offsite improvements that really didn't have anything to do with the site.
Okay.
And at that point, we just said that it wasn't really worth our while to do it, and we sort of dropped it at that point. And that's where we left it. And so now here we are. We're back.
Yeah. So Mark Gold, I think from a planning point of view, all we'd be involved with is probably that there's adequate parking, which is actually a ZBA thing. There's no change in use, so we don't touch that one. And all we look at is the facade. We look at signage, and and that the use is permitted. This is a tricky thing. It's something that's new and novel. We should probably combine boards here to work with this project. I mean, I think the town is dying for tax dollars. We want to see tenants in this property. It's been empty, as I think Steve Morantz mentioned, for quite a few years, and Frank really wants to bring this up to standard. I will add one other thing, and that is with the Longmeadow Street, the tip project you're talking about from Converse Street to the Enfield line. I mean, we are a complete street town, so I have not seen the engineering work. I don't know what complete streets will have as an impact on that intersection. Perhaps maybe Colvest would be interested in maybe some kind of I call it a mitigation fee, but maybe you guys might have to contribute a little bit to whatever the Complete Streets project requires to make Bliss and Longmeadow Street function there. So to make your project work. These are things that I'm just throwing them out. I don't know, this is down the road.
Yeah, one thing that, let me mention also, this is Frank Colicino, that when we came to your board, Walter, it was with Alex's Bagel.
Yep, that's exactly correct.
Alex's Bagel, we had made a deal with them, and they were originally going to go to where Visions was located.
Right.
And that was approved by the planning board.
Yes, correct.
And in that meeting, we talked about the expanded parking, and when part of the reason why Alex went across the street was because we didn't have the parking that he thought that he required. So
I also think that the town manager also, he sort of put a little bit of undue pressure on you for some sort of I use that word mitigation, but that's a term we use, as you well know, to sometimes you pay us a little bit and we give you back a little bit, and I think it was a little bit beyond Alex's pocketbook and yours at the time, and it was sort of unfair. I never finished my conversation with Stephen Crane on that, but as you know, the ending was that Alex ended up over on the other side of Longmeadow Street. So.
Right.
Okay. Now, as I recall this, Walter, I thought it had to do with sidewalks meeting ADA code. Wasn't there some kind of an issue with a?
Yeah, it actually doesn't.
Angle.
Yeah, it doesn't meet code now. So we would make it. Our project would make this in more compliance than it is today.
Okay.
Yes. Now, more compliance, is that the same as complete compliance?
It's not the same as complete compliance, but however, I can say that all of the town departments have reviewed this plan and have gone through it, and at the time had comments, and all of their comments were addressed. So not only the town engineer, but every other department as well.
Well, I haven't seen this whole thing, so if somebody, Lynn, maybe somebody would forward all this information, it'd be interesting to look at. It's complicated. This is a complicated piece of land. We have a lot of property, a lot of projects going on simultaneously. I mean, we're gonna have the Longmeadow Street thing. Again, it's a transit, it's a bus stop. It's multi-use, and then we did have a problem also at the time. I believe we were concerned about the gas station using your parking spots, and then you, Frank, or I think Jeff, you mentioned the town can regulate parking spots by putting up 2-hour signs or similar things. You said that
the town certainly can.
Yeah.
It's just that we haven't asked the town to do it.
Okay.
And just to clarify something as well that Mr. Gold asked earlier, we did commit to planting the 1 or 2 trees that were going to be lost elsewhere in town, and as far as we're concerned, we would still do that, and a location to be determined by the town.
Okay. And any other comments from Steve Morantz or Mark Strange? Okay, hearing none. So what do we do now? Is this a point where we would need a motion to accept this document.
And Tom, I'll make a motion that the select board authorize the town manager to enter into this agreement with Colvest Realty for the improvement of this town property. I'd like to make it contingent upon adding the requirement that they do replace the 2 shade trees somewhere in town, contingent, that are in agreement with the town tree warden.
And the letter of credit too. Could you add that, Mark? That this document would add the letter.
I'm okay with it the way it is. It's Colvest who wants the letter of credit.
We are asking for that. The town manager.
We're asking for the bond.
Huh?
We're asking for the bond the way it is. Colvest has proposed alternative to a bond, a letter of credit.
Correct.
Okay, so you wouldn't want to change it to a letter of credit?
No.
Okay.
I like it the way it is, Tom, with the addition of the trees.
Okay, all right.
That's my motion. I mean, somebody else can do something different, and if Colvest can convince the town manager that a bond or a letter of credit is equally good, just come back and we'll modify it and leave with them. But right now, the letter of credit is a request from Colvest, but there's nothing in writing, and I'm not going to approve anything that's not in writing. So if they want to wait and come back with a proposal that has a letter of credit instead, you can just table this. But I think they're better back and getting some approval and then making an adjustment to it. It's my opinion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table, and do we have a person to second that?
I have a question in terms of this motion.
Well, can you wait until the discussion? We don't have a motion to discuss until it's seconded.
Second.
Okay. And Mark Strange is seconded. Okay, now Stephen, please go ahead.
Well, what I'd like to add to the motion is what I heard from our town attorney is at some level, way, shape, or form, we have some obligation, should something happen with the Route 5 construction, that we're supposed to help out Colvest in whatever the state says we have to do. I don't think we should have anything to do with helping out Colvest if they want to do this with the state. I think we should have zero responsibility, zero liability in writing at all times with this project, particularly when it comes to the state.
Okay, and so Jesse, did you want to speak to that one more time?
I mean, there's not much else to add. The language, acknowledges the fact that there's this potential tip program, and it just says that even though the sort of the risk is on Colvest, the town agrees to use its best efforts to preserve the modifications to access and parking on the town property that are developed under this agreement. So, I imagine that as being that if there were changes, even if the town likes the proposed changes from the tip program, I don't know that the town can just decide we like that more, we're going with it. I think they have to do sort of reasonably support the changes Colvest makes and request that the state not require those changes. Now, the state may not care what the town thinks, or that may be dispositive. The state may come in and say, if the town wants the changes made, then you can, and otherwise we won't do them. But it does obligate the town to sort of go to bat with the state, at least on some level, to protect the changes that Colvest makes on the property.
Okay, any other discussion on this question or motion?
Yeah, Tom, the wall is not moving. The wall's staying exactly where it is. So any improvements that are going to be made, even with the federal highways project, is not connected with the improvements that are being made on the other side of the wall.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't see a lot of concern there because it is our property all the way around.
Rich, I think the difference is that right now, if the state was to come and say we need to move the wall east by 18 inches, we'd say, fine, we lose 18 inches of green space. But if after Colvest makes these improvements, if the state says we need to move the wall 18 inches east to widen the road, they lose a whole row of parking. And so that's what would then trigger this requirement for us to say to the state, no, can you figure out a way to not move the wall 18 inches to the east? And Steve Morantz, Steve Morantz's comment is we shouldn't need to say that. I think that's what he said, right, Steve? So, you know, we should just say whatever the state thinks is best is what we're gonna go with.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think.
Well, Mark, that's
This is
standard.
not going to be our fight, and it should not be our
That's
fight.
no, that's a standard business practice, Mark. That would go with any sidewalk, tree, shrub along any roadside in our town. I don't think this is any different. This is what they go through. If they expand the prism of the road, I don't think it matters what is there or what's been put there. If they're going to mandate that they expand that road, then they're going to lose part of the parking lot. End discussion.
Yeah.
But the question is, do we have to?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Just back to the tip improvement project, you also might face that, and Stephen Crane and I did look at this, the driveway might have to be reconfigured. That driveway is rather awkward how it now enters into Bliss Road. There's a stop line that you're supposed to stop at on Bliss Road. It allows that traffic sort of to progress out of that parking lot. With a complete streets project, that might become a problematic issue to the state when your engineers look at that. So there is an issue that, so you're looking at a legal document. I think you got to keep that in mind. There could be, eminent domain issues and, right of way changes that might occur here. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and what Walter said though, but those improvements will be funded through the TIP program.
Right.
They would have no bearing.
Right.
I mean, we're just going to redo the whole darn intersection. They're going to fund it to the TIP program.
But it doesn't affect, as long as it doesn't affect your contract with Colvest, if they lose maybe a parking spot or something changes or something moves. That's all I'm saying. I haven't seen this agreement. I'm just commenting here on things you should be looking for.
Oh, okay, Walter.
Okay. And Lynn, is there anything else that you wanted to weigh in before we proceed any further in the discussion?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. All right, so then we have a motion. It's been seconded.
Did Steve Morantz want to make an amendment to eliminate that clause from this proposal?
Yes. I'm not exactly sure what the wording of the amendment would be, but yes, absolutely.
The question is for Attorney, Belcher Timmy. I'm trying to find it in what.
It's in Article 4. Jesse knows where it is.
Yeah, it's in Article 4. Is this the best efforts language you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about the third line down, fourth line down, it starts with program, and then the clause is however, the town agrees. So that would be the clause I think that Mr. Morantz is addressing.
Yes, and I would amend that we remove that clause.
Could I make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
I'm not sure. I think I heard Mr. Gold say something one way and maybe something another way. On this letter of credit business, would it be acceptable to you to say that after analysis of what the letter of credit says, if the town manager thought that was appropriate, then we wouldn't have to come back to another select board meeting to discuss it? Did I hear you say that?
Jeff, that's fine. I just think, was the town manager who you're going to negotiate with. That's.
Well, I mean, it makes a difference to say we're going to delete that totally from the agreement, or we're going to say that it can stay in the agreement with the town manager's approval.
Well, but the agreement we have now doesn't say letter of credit, the one I've got.
No, I'm saying that I thought you said that at one point, that if the town manager thought the letter of credit, because you're talking about, we don't have the exact language for it. It now says performance bond, or it says it could be United States currency, it could be a certified treasurer cashier's check. I mean, these are all options that are in the agreement. And all we were trying to do is add in letter of credit as an option. And if your motion is that this agreement state that which of those options will be in the discretion of the town manager, that would be better than just saying you cannot put it in there at all. Because I think a letter of credit is a very simple way to do all this, and it's pretty standard. You see what I'm saying?
I'm personally fine with that. I just, want to make sure that we're not approving a letter of credit until we or somebody I'm sure when Lynn takes a look at it, she's going to have our attorney and other people make sure it adequately protects the town. And if she's sure, I'm okay with it. Personally, I'm okay with it. But
okay.
I don't know how we word that because right now we don't have that, but we can make that amendment if, as you suggested, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so then we have a motion, it's been seconded, and then the only question would be if we're gonna have an amendment to the motion addressing issues in section 4 that have to do with, making our best efforts to preserve modifications to access to park in the town property, developed under the agreement. And, I don't know, is that, so have you thought about what an amendment would be? I think, I don't see how that line really ties us in, but I could be wrong. So, to incurring expense.
Can I suggest based on Steve Morantz's amendment, that we strike the clause in Article 4 that suggests that requires the town to make its best, make a best effort with regard to the state. If we strike that clause, then that would be his amendment. We can vote on the amendment, and then we can have another amendment based on Mr. Roberts' recommendations, and then vote on the amended document.
Yeah, can I, this is Frank Colicino. Can I just chime in a little bit here?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. That amendment is really, something that we asked for, and we're going to be spending quite a bit of money in redoing this. And all we were looking for at the time was just in the event that the state approved of funding for a complete streets project, that they would just work with us. It was innocuous. We went over this with the engineer, when your interim town manager was there, and Jeff, if you were with us in that meeting, and he informed us that this could happen, and that the funding would change our improvements, and we said, okay, we're okay with that, except that you'll help us try to preserve it, and it doesn't put a requirement on the town. It's really a minimal ask in terms of us. I don't understand what the big deal is.
Mr. Colicino, if I could, I'll try to respond to that. I think what you're asking us put the best interests of Colvest ahead of the best interests of the town.
Not at all.
Conflict with regard to the redesign of Route 5.
Yeah,
At least that's how I read it. If the best interests of the town say Route 5 should be redesigned, and I'm just going to use an option, 18 inches wider to the east, which would require the demise of that wall, you're telling us we need to act in the best interest of Colvest and not necessarily in the best interest of the town. And that's what personally I'm concerned about.
I agree with what Mark had to say about removing that clause, because while I believe I understand what Colvest is saying, is once we're involved and it involves a lawyer, it's money and it's cha-ching, cha-ching. And I don't think we need to spend any kind of legal money defending Colvest's what they did to improve this property. That's not the deal. So I think
you're exaggerating the intent of that clause.
Is the best way to go.
We could go on and on. So is there any other members of the select board that want to weigh in on the amendment by Steve Morantz to remove that wordage from section 4? Any other comments from select board? Okay,
I'll just give my 2 cents. Can you hear me?
who is this? Who's speaking?
Mark Strange.
Oh, Mark, yes, please. Sorry, I couldn't.
So I do. I think as these projects go, you're going to have Mass DOT and a lot of engineers communicating with the town of Agawam and whoever the abutting property owners are. And there's quite a negotiation process that goes on before anything gets finalized. I think this paragraph is really nothing more than a gesture of goodwill, a compromise, and it doesn't obligate the town to anything, really. If you look at the language, it just says, yeah, we're going into this essentially as partners. This is good for the town, and they're saying, to the extent possible, you know, if you can advocate or communicate that message to the state, you know, that's what we would like to do. I don't see this coming down to be an issue. Just knowing how these projects go and how big they are and how complicated, I'd be very surprised if this ever came up again.
Okay, thank you.
Those are my 2 cents.
All right, so then we will call, so Stephen, you have this amendment to the motion for change the wording in section 4. Is there a second on that motion?
I second the amendment.
Okay, and there's a second on the amendment. So I guess I will call for a vote on Stephen Morance's amendment to the motion to change the wording in section 4. And Deb House, I'll ask you to do a roll call vote.
Tom,
No.
Mark Strange,
No.
Steve,
Yes.
Mark Gold,
Yes.
Richard,
No.
Okay, the motion did not pass. And we have the original motion to have the town manager move forward with this process to negotiate the terms of the contract. And so we'll take a roll call vote on that. Deb?
I think we wanted to put an amendment that would allow the town manager to authorize an alternate method of assuring completion of the project than a bond.
Okay, so that's an amendment to the original motion. That would include the possibility of having a letter of credit. Okay, is there a second on that motion, an amendment to the motion?
Second on the motion.
Okay, so let's call for a roll call vote on the amendment to the motion that would allow the letter of credit as another form of bonding.
Before the vote, could I make a clarification that I think we discussed? It would be a letter of credit if approved by the town manager.
Right.
Is that what Mr. Gold was talking about?
I
That
believe
was my intent, Mr. Roberts.
Yeah.
That's his intent. I believe that's intent. If approved by the town manager is in the main motion. Okay, so Deb House, we call for a roll call vote.
Tom,
Yes.
Mark Strange,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Mark Gold,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Okay, and now we come back to the original motion to have the town manager move forward on this agreement and negotiate. And Deb, will you take a roll call vote?
Tom,
Yes.
Mark Strange,
Yes.
Steve,
No.
Mark Gold,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you for everyone involved in this discussion. I think we ironed out as much as we could. And good luck to Lynn in moving forward with this. All right.
Thanks very much, and thanks for moving this up on the agenda a little bit.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, good night now.
Thank you.
All right, so the next thing that I wanted to move to would be the discussion about the water supply. Is item number 6 in the new business, because we have someone from, I believe we have someone from town still here.
Yeah, Tom, I'm here.
Okay, great. Okay, so Mark Gold had asked us to put this on the agenda. And Mark, do you want to start the discussion and then turn over the...
Sure, thanks, Tom. My concern was that during the hurricane aftermath or storm aftermath, some robocalls went around to the town residents and said, there's been a power failure that's impacted our pumping station on Forest Glen. Please curtail the use of water. And, my thought process was, the next day woke up and there was a massive, water main break in the south end of Springfield, which further complicated things. But my understanding was that it was the power outage that originally stopped this. And, we've got emergency generators on our sewer pumping. Amongst the town emergency, the last thing we need to do is tell people to slow down the use of their water. And I wanted to know if it made sense to potentially direct the water department to put emergency generators to run our water pumps. I mean, it's, the least we can do. And I understand a lot about the water and filling up the water tank. And, so I asked Lynn some questions about, do we have a dedicated line to the water tank, or does it just take water off of the town lines that are there? So you got to pump it to the whole town, whatever it is. But the issue is, should we be taking action to assure our water supply in case of power failures, which are becoming more frequent and more lengthy, to the water pumping station on Forest Glen?
Okay, Peter Thurber, would you want to comment on this?
Yeah, Mark, let me start by just saying the main reasons that we don't have a backup generator.
Peter, I think you need to move closer to your speaker and just, you can start over from the beginning.
Okay, is it better?
A little bit better. If you get a little closer.
Yeah, not really. I'm in my office here, and that's as far as I can.
Yeah.
Let me just. Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be better when you get a new office in the DPW.
That's what we're hoping.
I don't know, you may have to call in on your cell phone.
Yeah, everything's up on my computer. I don't know. Still, you can't hear me?
I think we hear some. Let's give it start talking a little bit and we'll let you know.
So like I was saying, so first, part of that is if you remember the main reason we don't have a generator because the main water supply doesn't get in from our food.
I don't think we can hear that. No, that's not going to work.
All right.
So I guess I don't know what our option. I don't know if there's another phone that you can call back in, and maybe we can get better luck with that.
You try.
Okay. So let's see.
Pete, can you try to call in on the number? I can email it to you or text it to you, and then maybe we could move on to something else. And then when you can get in, we can come back to you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. Let's plan on that. Okay, so the other thing would be the charter. We will move on to some old business on the discussion of the charter and forms of government and structural changes to local government. And so let's turn it over to, this is agenda item for Richard Foster. So take it away, Richard.
Well, actually, Tom, I'm not quite sure what you wanted to have on the agenda tonight, since we basically just had a brief discussion on this. We're just kind of creeping open the door. I know we've been flooded by a lot of letters. I noticed that we had Dave Martell on there also.
Yes.
The main reason that I brought this issue up, we heard tonight Liz Bone said that select board members were invited to come before this committee and that they decided they wouldn't. I've never heard of such a thing. I have no idea what she's talking about. I asked several times why we weren't going in front of this commission or the committee, and never did get an answer. So the only thing I can figure is possibly somebody stopped that communication before it got to the select board. It's the only thing I can imagine. But I know for a fact, let me put this way, I know for a fact I was never invited to participate because I would have been talking about the forms of government because we obviously had some problems with our planning efforts and that types of thing at our town meeting. And that prompted the whole discussion. You know, like Pete Landon had a minority report that he put out was very similar to what I've been saying too, that we have some very critical issues to get before our town electorate and they get blown out of the water because people don't understand what we're doing. And it's kind of a hard thing to accept that you're going to be delayed 6 months, another year, because if somebody misunderstands something. You know, I think the present form of government that we have, in my view, is it disenfranchises voters quite often. We have no remote options available. Our seniors with nighttime vision problems and delayed hours and transportation issues don't attend. We don't even have space to accommodate we couldn't even accommodate 30% of our legislative body there. We just don't have space to bring it. Definitely hampers single parents, and parents of young children have more difficulty in time trying to attend. Normally, and I guess all the board members will recognize what I'm saying, we normally have somewhere between 2 to 3.5% of our electorate that shows up at our town meetings, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the issues. And with the way it's set up on the town floor, it's a very poor place to debate complex issues and policy decisions because of the rules of debate, you know, 5 yes, 5 no, and everybody calls the question and everybody sits down. And that's a very inappropriate amount of time to debate very complex issues. So that was the point I was trying to bring. This is more, Tom, I envision this more as an ongoing discussion with our select board that we understand the different forms of government that are available and that the options that we could make a recommendation to move towards a more functional form of government if we felt it was required. I don't think we've ever had meaningful discussions on the board where we've talked about, say, a council manager form of government. I mean, the public is not aware of what that animal is. And I know I've never had a discussion of this type of government in the 8 years that I've been on the board, although I realize now with a little research that this is the most popular form of government across the United States. We also had the representative form of government. I mean, all of these governments would give a better opportunity for our citizens to actually be heard from. You know, right now we have 11,000 plus registered voters in our legislative branch. And most, if not all, they might be able to reach out to 5 different select board members to give them comments to go to the floor. But there's 11,000 registered voters out there. And with a representative government, if we had 125 identified representatives, you at least would be able to you could possibly email all 125 of those representatives, and that way you would touch the entire legislative body. If you had a council form of government, you'd have 9 to 11 members. You could easily reach out. Any citizen could easily reach out and contact every one of those with their opinions. With our present form, it's almost impossible. It's impossible. It's like we've grown past it. You know, back in the 70s and 50s and all, it may have been a very good form of government where we had a pretty good turnout. I checked some stats. It looks like they had about the same amount of people. I can't guarantee it because they didn't keep the same records, but generally the same amount of people were turning out for these meetings in the 50s. And, you know, the population in our town was considerably less at that. So it looks like the participation in these meetings is going downhill to where we're down to a very small percentage of the people making decisions in our community. And basically it's the same people. I mean, if you go back and look at some of the old tapes, it's the same players that are coming up. So that was why I wanted this discussion to be brought out. The thing that really kicked it in the head was that planning effort this year that you mentioned about the $100,000 to move forward on the planning for a chip project for Longmeadow Street. And it was blown out of the water by some citizen that I had no idea what the credentials of the person were to be talking. I wasn't at the meeting, but yet that program wasn't defended by a single person on this board or anybody else in the audience. It was just blown and cast to the side. It's an insane process to where we would deny $100,000 of money that moves us closer to getting $10 million free from the state. We're going to have to do that road regardless of who pays for it, but this is the legal mandated effort that we must go through to get in line to get that money, and it was blown out of the water, and we've lost another year. So I'm frustrated. So that's why I said maybe it's time for us to at least have this discussion, and at our level. No decision has to be made, Tom. That's how we're after. I think it's time for a discussion, for us to talk about it for a while, maybe start to do some surveys, maybe try to figure out, I found out recently that we as a board ourselves can actually propose governmental changes and let them go to the meeting, to a town meeting, and then pass them on. If they're approved, you pass them on to the legislature, and it goes through all the approvals up to the governor, and then comes back down for a full review of our community where it goes to a general election. Nobody's ever mentioned that process before, but that is an actual process. It's in the law that we can use. So there's a lot of angles to look at this. And I don't know where else I can leave it, Tom. That's where that's where I'm trying to get us to the point that at least we explore it. This was not done, and it wasn't a core function of the Charter Review Committee. They cannot change the form of government, but they could have talked to us, and there could have been recommendations from even that group of saying, hey, why don't you at least look at these different things? Why don't you form a study group to look at the form of governments? I mean, but to me, there was nothing except routine kind of word changes in the government. And I know for a fact, Stephen, I think, was at almost every single meeting. And some of the changes I've read are strictly to what I figure his benefit at that point. I know these were issues that he personally was pushing. So that's where I'll leave it. I don't expect any action, Tom, tonight. I don't know if we need to spend a lot of time. I think it's an ongoing issue that we'll just be talking about.
Okay. Well, we've sort of opened the door on it, and
Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me. We've had some feedback from some folks, and it seemed appropriate, although a number of people would have liked to have spoken, that we have Dave Martell make some comments, as he was the last chair of the review committee. And, and I know that we all received the documents that you had put in the agenda. So guess I'll ask Dave Martell if he could just speak, if you could unmute yourself and comment.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, I'm on the phone.
That's perfect. We can hear you. Dave? Oh. He was there and he hung up. Maybe we'll call back in. Oh, here he is.
There was no sense among the committee members or members of the public there were a number of them who came before us who said that the town meeting form of government.
All right. That's basically your statement? Okay, I guess that's it. So we can ask for...
Can I just make a comment, please?
Well, I believe we will. Yes, we'll go through the select board. Mark Waller.
Thanks. I think that Richard identified two areas that sounded like they frustrated him, and to some degree, they frustrate me. And those are low participation, and sometimes the minority can drive a decision and set the town in a different direction. And that's what happens, excuse me, when only a couple hundred people show up at a town meeting. You know, not necessarily a reason to change the form of government, but certainly means that we're not doing our jobs if, you know, if we only have a minority of people showing up at the meeting, and we've got a lot of minority issues that are getting passed and driving the town meeting. And I mean, my personal opinion is that, you know, if 10 signatures to get something on a town warrant is nuts these days, because I can get 10 people to sign for anything. On the other hand, that's not a bylaw, that's a state law. And so that's not something we're gonna change. But, you know, I think we ought to, as a board, focus on how do we get higher participation and start, you know, pushing aside some of these potential minority issues that have take up a lot of time and create a lot of use of resources that the majority might not support.
Okay, thank you. Mark Strange, any comments?
Yeah, so going into this whole thing, I was kind of skeptical about how effective town meeting can be in the 21st century, considering it was created, you know, back in the 17th century when towns were 40 to 50 people, and they literally gathered at the town green and had their meeting. But after talking to several people who know a lot about this topic and hearing from the Charter Review Commission, I am comfortable with our town meeting, or open town meeting form of government. And I do think we should keep it. I will say that I came onto the board kind of midway through adopting the Charter Review recommendations. I think we should make it a priority to adopt their recommendations, whatever ones are still left. I think we owe it to that commission to effectuate their recommendations and validate their hours of work and volunteer time. And you know, to Mark's point, I think we need to find a way to get more people involved. I don't know if that's in some way allowing them to participate remotely, doing a better job of educating the public on issues that are coming, not only for town meeting, but come up, you know, in our meetings. You know, participation is very low everywhere for local government, any government. So there is that challenge. You know, but I think we have the best form of government right now. We got to try to make it better.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Steve, would you like to comment?
Yes, I have several comments about this. I think that we have way too much on our plate to be discussing a charter commission, which is what we're going to need to change the form of town government. I don't think we should really spend a whole lot of time on this, but as long as I'm speaking, I will agree with Richard Foster completely. I think town meeting was a really wonderful idea in 1720. In 2020, with 11,000 town voters, think about this. We had all 11,000 town voters show up. The Mullins Center in Amherst is the only venue in the whole Western Massachusetts that can actually fit the required population into it. If we had 8,000, we might squeeze into the Mass Mutual Center, maybe. So as a form of government that's participatory, it was, as I said, and I think back in the day it was really swell, but I think it's outmoded. It's just not what we need today. And having said all that, though, I think to discuss this at this point in time, Charter Commission is the last thing this town needs to be voting on for the next bunch of years. First, we need to get through COVID and the $25, taxing the cap. We have a lot to do before we say, let's once again have a charter commission to change the form of government. So, well, I think we want one. I don't think now is the time.
Okay, thank you. So I have some comments. I had a lot of letters from folks who were basically saying that they want to maintain the town meeting. They like the format. That, you know, and I think there's a couple of things that really made an impression on me. And one was an individual who basically first, you know, at a town meeting, they got up and spoke for the first time. And then later they, you know, got on some committees and started getting more involved in the town. But the town meeting is an important sort of avenue for leadership development. And leadership development is really important because we need to develop leaders from our community who can speak out in front of a group of people and then run for office. And so this offers, you know, we have meetings where young people, you know, very young, speak in front of the town. And you can't get that by sending a Twitter or by sending an email. You really need to get people out. A lot of public, you know, the duties of a public servant, you know, of a government official are public. You need to speak in front of people. I mean, the fact that we're doing this virtually is a little different, but as you know, we have to speak in front of large groups of people. And so, you know, a town meeting becomes a great venue for leadership development. The other thing is, as a person with a research background, is we look at, you don't always need to capture the information of every person in the sample to know what's going on. Like if you want to know everything about seniors, you know, in town, or people over age 35, oh, no, I guess seniors would be older than that. But if you wanted to get a sample, if you have a representative sample, you know, if you find that if you get just enough people in your sample, you really know, and you can extrapolate into the whole population. And I think, you know, our town, the people who do attend are a pretty representative sample. We get a pretty broad view of folks from all sections of the town. And I think we get different ages. And I think that we get people who are well prepared for town meetings, you know, that we read. I'm not saying every person reads everything before they come in, but I think that we have some quality people. So the other thing is, when I reviewed the materials that we sent, and, you know, it seemed clear to me that, you know, one of the major issues was that they said that, you know, they summarized this one approach is that whenever an organization is not working, people look for leadership to make it better. And so then people begin to look at what are our different options. And example after example in the materials that we were sent really said that there was some sort of conflict that was in the town that was pretty significant. And it, over time, the town eventually changed the form of government. And in this case, I don't see that. So you know, that's why we haven't gotten a lot of support for really looking at having a charter review at this, or not a charter review, but a new charter commission. But, you know, I think that it might be helpful for people to have read the information that you sent, Richard. I think it was helpful for me to look at it, but I still have every sense of confidence that we have the right type of government. So I guess, you know, we've opened the door. We've kind of discussed this a little bit, and I don't know where we go from here. I don't, Richard, if you is this sort of where you want to leave things for now, and then just bring this up at some later point?
Yeah, let me correct one thing, Tom, if you can. We don't need a charter commission to change our form of government. That's a misconception. The select board can go through a process through the legislation called a special act. So there's a lot of things that we don't know about the process. And Tom, I understand what you're saying. we get these letters, and we got the letters coming out right now that say the town needs the best thing since butter on grits. But when we look at the percentage of who we've listened to, we have over 11,000 registered voters. And if you heard from 15 people, you can see what the percentage is. And I know the people that are going to write right now, just like the ones that are online here to talk tonight, they're in favor of the town meeting. Because there hasn't been an honest attempt to go to the other part of the people and say, hey, look, here's the options, folks, and here's the problems we see. So we can let this issue go by the wayside. There's no action required on the board. I was only trying to bring awareness up, and I may give you some additional information that I have, because I think it's good information for us to have as elected officials. We should know what forms of government there are. I'd like to take a test right now, but I don't want to embarrass anybody. So we'll just let the issue drop down. That's fine.
Okay, all right, great. Well, we'll look forward. If you have other things for us to read, we can, just put them as an addendum to our meeting in the future, and that's great. Okay, thank you. All right, so now.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, Peter. All right, Mr. Thurber's here. So we'll go back to the issue of water supply discussion. Mark, for those of you who may have missed some earlier, Mark Gold had talked about perhaps we need to have generators that would help pump water into the tower so we didn't have a water shortage. And so, Peter, we'll let you take it over.
So what I was just in question, like to Mark's question earlier. So how the pump station works is we have our two 16-inch transmission lines coming in from Springfield supplying water. The two check valves that we have coming in, they are powered normally, they're powered closed, so they are normally open. So anytime there is a loss of power, there is no need for a generator backup, because what happens is the valves will remain open and stay open and fill the tank. So two things that happen is once that happens, the tank will continue to fill and eventually it will overflow. We did put in, because we had an issue back probably about 8 years ago or so when we painted the interior of the tank, that we had to shut the tank off. And what that did is that increased pressure and we were blowing water main lines. So what we have redundant now was we have a pressure regulator in that pump station. So if there is longer than, say, typically when we lose power over at the pump station, it's a short time where we can just allow, we don't lose a lot of water. We let the tank fill and we let it overflow, never without water. But during that time, the main reason why we put a call out there, I worked with John Dearborn on this, was because this is an exceptional year where probably in a long time, in the 14 years that I've been here, that pretty much every day we have both pumps running in the morning to try to maintain our level in the tank, because everybody's irrigating because of lack of rain. So with the power outage, I was in contact with John Dearborn about 1:30 in the morning. They said that Eversource was going to get the power back on early morning, which it came on at 4 o'clock. So just for precaution, we wanted to put that notification out there that there was, just for, for lawn irrigation only, just to conserve that, just before the power, came back on, just for the early morning demand. But during that time, I was up around 4:30, and that's when that large water main break happened in Springfield over on Columbus. So during that time, that was kind of a good thing, because our tank was full and overflowing a little bit when we lost pressure from Springfield. So we had to hurry up and get in, and we basically had to shut down the pump station tank because it was all going back into Springfield. So we were fortunate enough where Ludlow, majority of Springfield, and half of East Longmeadow did not have any water. We did maintain, and we did have some water until Springfield could isolate that and build our pressure back up. And then we could turn our pump back on and fill up the tank. So as far as having a backup generator, the only thing a backup generator would do at this point would be, it would run our fluoride system. which, you know, when we have emergencies like this, that's not a necessity. So even if we did have a generator where it would, you know, run our pumps, even without power, I mean, it still wouldn't have mattered because, like I said, we were losing pressure from Springfield. And at that time, the pumps were running, but we couldn't even turn the pump on because we had higher pressure in our system than what Springfield had. If we had opened up the station again, we would have lost our tank completely.
Well, that's a very thorough description. Thanks, Mark. Did you have any other questions on that?
Yeah, I did. I mean, Peter, I appreciate the comments. I still don't understand why a call went out that said, you know, due to power failure, please restrict your water use. And it's just flat out seems to me that, you know, all the goofy things we engineer and put in place here, you know, supplying water to our residents is pretty darn important. And for Pete to say, you know, if we had an extended power outage, don't worry, we don't need to keep those pumps running. I don't understand. I mean, I understand fluid dynamics. I'm, you know, chemical engineer. I get all that stuff. You know, we have pumps to pump water into the town of Longmeadow. If the pumps don't run, you know, obviously we're at much lower pressure unless our water tower is full. If our water tower is full, then we've got to back up from that system. But if our water tower is not full, we don't have a backup. And again, I don't know what kind of a generator we need. We certainly have a generator down on our sewage pumping station because otherwise our sewers would all back up. I'm just saying, you know, what would it take? How much does it cost? What would it be as part of this whole thing we talk about as emergency services? Why we don't have emergency backup for a required utility like that? I just don't get it. And to say that the city of Springfield's got enough pressure going into the system, then why do we have pumps at all? So I hear Pete, I understand it.
So Mark, just to let you understand that, the pumps right now, basically what they're doing is they're filling the tank because of people's irrigation systems. Those pumps do not run from, basically, they're off in September and they don't come back on until May. Those pumps do not run at any other time except when the irrigation systems are running in the town and we have a lot of irrigation and we have that high demand. So you have people waking up in the morning. They don't run in the afternoon. They run first thing in the morning, only in the summertime when there's high demand. There's been times where those pumps have run maybe 20 hours in a year. So at the time, the engineers, when we were going with, you know, we were looking at putting in, it was an awful lot of money to spend on a generator to sit there. Not only don't we have the room in the area over at the pump station at Forest Glen, because we sit half in Springfield, but to have that money for a standby generator sit there and do nothing, it was a lot of money at the time. It's just the way the system's designed. And like I said, you want to know what those pumps are for? Those pumps are for filling up the tank when we have high demand in the summertime for people's irrigation.
Thank you for clarifying that. Other members of the board have any comments? Steve Morantz?
No comments.
Okay. Mark Strange?
Nothing.
Okay. Richard Foster?
The only question I have, Tom, Pete, what would happen if we had a prolonged power outage, maybe a week or so?
We would still, the check valves would be open, the tank would be filling, but at that point, we wouldn't want to waste all that extra water because we are paying it for Springfield. So what we would do is we have our pressure reducing valve that was installed when we painted the interior of the tank, and that regulates normal operating pressures when we have our check valves open, you know, from Springfield during normal operations. So we don't have to, you know, we won't be blowing the water main lines by, you know, shutting off the tank completely, because that's what happened last time. We increased the pressure. Gravity, we have about 100 PSI coming in from Springfield at Forest Glen Pump Station. So we're kind of lucky that way. But so if we had like you said, if we had a prolonged outage place in the pump station.
Yeah, and I guess you'd possibly have to put a call out for people to stop irrigating, correct?
And that's kind of what we did. I wasn't afraid of it. There was at no point we weren't afraid of running out of water, but because of the high demand, We just wanted to, maintain a little bit water level in that tank.
But Pete,
So
that's the message I got. It didn't say stop irrigating. It said don't use water, period.
Right. So what happened on that?
Watch our messaging.
Well, what happened on that time is because when that break was going on, it was draining all our tank. And by the time we could get down to that pump station and close our valves, we were losing all the water. We were in jeopardy of losing the water in the tank until we could shut that pump station down. So the message went out, and it was kind of confusing. When we went back and I talked to Dearborn and I talked to the fire department, if they could put a message, it was again, not use the water, for irrigation. But the message, of course, half of us didn't get it because at that same time everything was going on, Verizon went out, so nobody could use their cell phones. But then we started getting calls down here at the DPW, and what was going on. So we put a new call out there explaining what was going on.
Okay, Pete, and talking to people from other towns who didn't have any water, I appreciate the work that you guys did and your quick action. Now, how often does something like this happen, where the water coming out of Springfield is such at a low level that it would actually drain water from our water tower into Springfield? Has this happened a handful of times in your career? I mean, how many times?
Since I've been here, it's happened twice.
Twice.
They've had major water main breaks. I think there was this one just last week, and there was another one. I want to say that was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, down on Union Street. They had a very large break, and like I said, when that happens, we have to get down to the pump station. I mean, the fail-safe is normally, like I said, the power outage. We have water. We're not worried about losing water because the fail-safe is those check valves open. But it's a totally different story when Springfield, we lose pressure from Springfield. In the interim, what we were trying to do is we have an agreement with Hazardville Water where we have an interconnection. There's a 12-inch interconnection on Shaker, and we were trying to get a hold of them during this. They can supply us. It hasn't been set up before. We have not used it before, but for emergency, we can hook up a pump and hydrant to hydrant and get water from Hazardville Water or Connecticut Water from Enfield to supply us with water. Hydraulically, it's not enough to fill up our tank, but it will give us some water into the system if we lose our source from Springfield for a long period of time. And then again, they can only supply us with X amount of gallons of water anyway at that particular time.
Right.
Yeah, Pete, what about your check valves up there? Did they kick in?
The check valves were open. They're powered closed. So anytime we lose power at Forest Glen pump station, they're open. That allows us to get water from Springfield. If there's
but I mean, in this reverse flow situation, they didn't automatically shut when they had reverse flow on them?
No. When the power was restored, those valves, the way it happened so quickly with the power coming back on, which came about 4 o'clock in the morning. So there was like an hour and a half span time from when the power came back on and when the water main break was going, that the valves we were already losing water. So we had
Richard, what you call a check valve isn't a check valve, because if it's a check valve, it only allows flow in one direction. And
right, that's what I was about to ask him.
They're globe valves. We call them check valves just because they call them check valves. They've always called them check valves, but it's just a big globe. It's just a big globe valve. They've everything on there, all the controls, everything. They call them check valves, but it's a globe valve.
Okay, so it's a spring load and it just opens. It opens up.
When they are closed, that's the check valve. They're closed. No water's going into Springfield.
Right, but I mean, when you lose power, they automatically open up.
Correct.
Okay, so then we could have drained the tank. Period.
Correct. Right. Because of the water main break. Like under normal circumstances, if that had happened and we lost power, the valves are still gonna, you know, they're still gonna open. And then we would have to manually shut them.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
because it happened so quick before the power came back on and they were draining back, there wasn't time for that, so we just had to shut the station down. And then of course we couldn't, because we only had about 30 when they were isolating their break. It took them a while, just because most of the valves were underwater down on Columbus. So what we ended up doing is, before we could turn our pump back on to start filling up water again into our system, they only had about 30 pounds, and we still had about 45, 50 pounds in our system at the time. So of course, if we had opened up those check valves, there was no water coming in from Springfield again, we would continue to drain the tank.
Right.
Great. Well, I hope that we have enough information on that. We got a busy agenda.
There's still a flaw in the system, Tom. I mean, Peter, he keeps calling them check valves, but I'm an engineer. They're not check valves, they're globe valves. What we need is check valves, it sounds like, so that water can't flow back into Springfield. You know, and if you want to put water in Springfield, then you build a bypass around the check valve that you have to go down and open manually. If for some reason you need to backfeed the system. But something happened, and it, you know, from a hydraulic system, it didn't work right if we were emptying our water tank back into the city of Springfield. That's all I'm saying. And if it's not needing a generator, maybe we need true check valves with a bypass system. But we got to do something, because we can't afford to lose water like that.
Okay, we'll leave that discussion at that point. Thank you for your comments. And Peter, thank you for explaining everything for us. We'll need to move on. Now, Paul Pasturzik, I know there was some talk about the investment policy. Was there someone who's going to be speaking to that tonight?
Yeah, Cheryl Kudnick is on the line here.
Yeah, why don't we move on to that so Cheryl can do this? She doesn't have to stand in front of us in person, but we'll look forward to her report. So let's turn it over to the investment policy quarterly report.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Kudnick, and I'm submitting the quarterly report for the town's cash and investment for the period ending June 30th, 2020. And as usual, the town held no long-term investments that exceeded the 5-year limit. The individual bank balances were under the $5 million balance provision, except for Country Bank and Adams Savings that hold bond proceeds, which allow for us to have an $8 million balance. All banks again received the highest safety rating of green from Vera Bank, and all accounts are fully insured and secured. We did a borrowing at the end of May for $20,124,706. And of this borrowing, $11,453,000 was refunding on the 2011 school bond. $112,000 was refunding on the 2011 water bond. $2,410,000 is towards the DPW facility. $1,343,000 is for the Wolf Swamp Fields. $700,000 for the landfill phase 2. $722,000 for the sewer and scepter, and $380,000 for the Willowbrook Road drainage. With the bond proceeds and associated bond premium of $3,004,706, and adhering to the investment policies, these funds were deposited to Adams Savings Bank, which was earning 1.35. I deposited 3.3 million. 3.9 million went to Country Bank at 0.75%. 2.5 million went to Munson Savings at 0.5%, and the remaining $7,750,000 to People's United, and $2,474,706 to East Boston Savings Bank, and those funds totaling $13,852,477 were then used to pay the refunding of the 2011 bonds for the school and the water mains. The rates have continued to decline. People's United total weighted rate last quarter was 2.24%, was reduced to 0.21%. MMDT decreased from 1.88% to 0.52%. Munson Savings total weighted rate of 1.65% was decreased to 0.50%. And Adams Savings Bank was one of the banks that had the least decrease, from 1.7% to 1.35%. And with the rate changes, I did move in July 2.3 million from People's United to Munson Savings that was paying a higher rate. In April, we went out to search for a lockbox service, and the 3 banks that I looked at, Century Bank came back with the most cost-effective use for the lockbox. And we did start that with our first quarter tax bills. I do encourage the residents to use a lockbox service. It is going to be much more timely getting the money to the bank, and the posting is much more accurate. Also, it's and there will be an envelope provided, making it much more easier for the residents to use. The interest earned on all bonds proceeds this quarter was a total of $54,750, and the investment income earned this quarter on the OPEB pension reserve funds was $218,589. Let's see, our net decrease this quarter of $2,565,405 in cash and investments was a result from the warrants payable and the teachers' balloon payroll. I mean, we received commitments for motor vehicle, real estate, personal property, and the bond proceeds. However, with the DPW facility and the Council on Aging facility expenditures, the debt payments going out alone totaled over $20 million. As a treasurer, I will continue to seek the best possible interest rates and fund our accounts payable and payroll timely with funds from bank accounts earning the lowest interest rates when possible, and will continue to monitor all funds and accounts and move funds to achieve the highest rates when available.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. That sounds great. So do we need to vote to accept this, or?
Not necessarily, just if you have questions.
Okay, good. Are there any questions on the board regarding this?
I have a question.
Yes.
What is, in terms of a single deposit number at a single bank, what is the limits, the insurance, the limits?
The limits are I believe they're $5 million with our investment policy, with the exception of if we have bond proceeds, because we get a huge influx of money with bond proceeds, in which case the bank limit is $8 million.
Okay, so theoretically, if we had $5 million, we could stick it into one bank. The only way we could stick more than that and have it insured is if it was bond proceeds.
Right, and they all are insured either through the FDIC or other collateralization. Again, all part of the bond, the investment policy.
Okay.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the board? Okay, well, thank you for your report, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
And we can start to move. I think the other thing that we wanted to put on the agenda, or not on the agenda, but just to return to in terms of old business, is the coalition, Longmeadow Coalition for Racial Justice. We received a PDF on that, and so we can discuss that. I will turn that over to Mark Strange, right?
Yeah, I guess I can start it off, and then I'll toss it over to Lynn.
Oh, okay.
So we our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, we adopted a resolution to determine that racism was a public health crisis in Longmeadow, and part of course to work on some of the issues that are enumerated in the resolution and also in the in this PDF that's on tonight's agenda, which Lynn created. So I think at this point I'll toss it over to Lynn and then maybe jump back in what she's done.
Thanks. Yeah, so at your July 6th meeting, this was a topic of conversation. The board directed me to come up with a framework for a coalition or committee or task force. And this is what I have presented to you tonight. So I will read this, I'll summarize it for those watching and maybe who haven't clicked on the link on the website, but this is linked on the agenda. So what I have put in front of you tonight as a draft is that there would be a task force made up of 9 residents with demonstrated interest, experience, or expertise in the issues under review, especially Black, Indigenous, people of color, or people from other historically marginalized communities. That would be the makeup of the 9 residents. The task force would discuss, research, gather data, and report back to the select board on the steps the town can take to reshape the discourse and actively engage all citizens in the dedicated work necessary to address the scourge of systemic racism, recommend alliances with organizations that are confronting racism, and how those alliances can benefit the community, identify methods or areas to promote racially equitable hiring and promotion of all employees, including town employees, and advocate for and draft relevant policies that recognize and seek to mitigate the adverse impacts of racism. I had in this draft here that people could submit a letter or an email to myself, the town manager, by September 1st, and that the group would convene virtually in September with the goal of issuing a report to the select board by March 31st. This is, again, a draft to start some conversation and see if this is heading in the right direction or what modifications should be made so we could get started on this.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Any comments or questions from the board? Steve Morantz?
No, I think it's a good start, although I'm still not quite sure why it has to fall in the lap of the town manager to do all this. But I think in terms of what Lynn has drafted, I think that's, I think that would be on the right track.
Okay. Richard Foster?
No comments, Tom.
Okay. Mark Gold?
The question for Lynn, is this a town manager's task force or a select board's task force? And is it the town manager who appoints the members of the select board?
Good question. I guess I'm looking for some feedback from you all. My understanding based on that meeting on July 6th was that you directed me to kind of pull this together, that there wasn't the thought that it was necessarily my task force, but that this group would work to pull a report together and submit that back to the select board. So I would imagine that this may be a select board populated group, if that were the case, if they were reporting back to you. But I think we can certainly discuss that.
Yeah, the issue for me is the issue of, open meeting laws and minutes and all that kind of stuff. Town managers task force aren't subject to those requirements, but a select board task force is. And so, it's just a matter of, visibility or openness, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mark Strange, any other comments?
Oh, hold on, Mark. Let me unmute you.
Okay.
Unless you can do it.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can.
So I had always envisioned this as a select board appointed task force. I think it's important for, the applicants and the interviews to be conducted in public. And I do think that following open meeting guidelines and laws will be important as well.
Okay.
So to me, those were the kind of two outstanding questions that Mark kind of beat me to the punch on those. That's my 2 cents.
All right. Yeah, I mean, my feedback, it's a great start. I think let's see what folks we have interested in it, and then figure out the next step. Again, for me, there's 2 issues, primary. One is that racism and how it affects individual, and the other is there are people in our community or in situations who can discriminate against people, and they're really kind of separate. You can have racists who never able to discriminate, but discrimination is, not giving people an equal advantage in situations and doing it on the form of, their their race, basically. But discrimination is another thing we need to make sure is that, and it looks like you're trying to address that in this information also. Okay, so where, I mean, do we want to just start to form this and then have further discussion on it? Or is there any other ideas at this point about this being a select board or a town manager group?
If Mark, thought it should be a select board task force, I think so too. I think we should just organize it as such, and if letters of interest are due by September 1st, at our first, or depending on your agenda, the second meeting in September, get them all in for interviews. Let them then start the system up. Is that what you intended, Mark?
Yeah.
All right, and that's what we'll
So
plan.
would they'll submit letters of interest to me, and then I bring them forward to you at your September 8th meeting would this be an interview process similar to what you do for boards and committees?
Well, if we're adopting a board with 9 people, if we get 20 applications, then we go through the interview process, I guess, Lynn. And my sense is use the same form we use for other committees and groups and things like that. And, so we get a little bit of background on people, but yes, the answer is yes, that's the way it would be done, I guess.
Okay. And now, just the time frame here is just something I plugged in just as a talking point, I guess, or not a talking point, as a point of discussion. And I'm seeing the possibility that September 1st might be too short of a time frame, but I'm also trying to do something that recognizes that we want this coalition to get up and running. Would we want to push that out until your second meeting in September and have the deadline be the Thursday before that meeting, which would be September 17th, which gives us a full month.
But I think you want to give Deb some time to arrange the interviews. She may want to get it in a few days earlier than the 17th.
Okay. So the 14th, a week before your 21st meeting.
Or even if it was the 14th or the 15th, she's going to need time to make some arrangements for interviews and timetables.
All right.
Mark, you want to make a motion to accept this with the new date?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept this, I guess, guidance letter for creating the Longmeadow Coalition for Racial Justice, with the only change to the letter being that residents can submit a letter or email to the town manager by September, what did we decide on, 14th?
14th is 4 weeks, so I think that's enough.
Yeah.
Okay, and do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, we'll take a roll. Any discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Deb House, will you do that?
Hey, Tom, who seconded that?
Mark Gold.
Okay. Roll call vote, Tom?
Yes.
Mark Strange?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark Gold?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Okay, well, that'll be good, because this is a busy time. I mean, I know some people are trying to squeeze in last minute vacations because they realize they haven't had any because of COVID, and then there's also school starting, people are shopping and all that stuff, so it'll give people a little more time. So that's great. Okay, and where do we go from here? I guess we can move back up to the beginning. I don't think we're going to hit everything, but I would like to do approval of the minutes. We have 2 minutes from 8/3/2020 and 8/7. A motion to approve the minutes of 8/3.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, call for a vote. Deb?
Tom, who seconded that one?
Mark Gould.
Mark Gold, second.
Mark Gold?
Yeah.
Right, Tom?
Yes.
Mark Strange?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark Gold?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Okay, and then approval of the minutes of August 7th. Special meeting.
So moved.
Okay, the second.
Second.
Okay, by Mark Strange. We vote on this?
Tom?
Yes.
Mark Strange?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark Gold?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Okay, so I am going to move over a couple. We did have, well, let's see where we're at. It's almost 10. I think we should move on to the approve the residents' request for address change. And we have two different requests. The first one is for property on Frank Smith that wanted to change their address to Wellesley. I don't know if we have anyone to speak on that. I don't see anyone.
Don, there's no one to speak, but I know the history if you want me to let the board know.
Sure, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, this is Jerry Nolet to put this request in. Apparently, when his home was developed, the driveway and the mailbox is located on the side street, which he is requesting to be his official address. But his home actually is listed on Wolf Swamp Road. And he's just asking, like the other residents, that it be on the side street instead of Wolf Swamp Road.
Yeah, I'd correct you. It's Frank Smith Road.
Excuse me, Frank Smith. That's correct.
All right. There were some photos attached, and on the photo, it shows all the mailboxes lined up on Wellesley. There are none on Frank Smith, and there's no house, no access to the home from Frank Smith Road either. There's actually a wall retaining there.
That's correct, Tom. And it's like he mentioned, all the other homes that are under similar circumstances have the side street address.
Yeah.
I would move that we accept the address change.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, we'll call for a vote. Okay.
Tom?
Present.
Mark?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mark Strange. Steve?
Yes.
Mark Gold?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Okay. And we also have another address change request, and this is for a gentleman who's at 38 Twin Brook Circle and would like to change it to 36 Twin Brook Circle. I don't know if Mr. Ty is on here to comment on it, but I don't see him. So, all right. So where do we go with this? We have a motion on this change.
Yeah, so moved for discussion.
I'll move we approve it.
Okay, and then Mark would, Richard.
I'll second it. I'll second it, Tom.
Okay, all right, so Mark forwarded the motion and then Richard seconded. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, do you know anything in the history on this one, Tom?
No, I know that we probably get about, I don't know, every 7 years, we may get 2 or 3 of these. But he just wants to have his house be 36 and the house across be 35 instead of 38. And you know, he says good feng shui.
My comment is anyone who mentions feng shui should get my vote. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get the town in order. Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so we'll move to a vote on the motion. Deb, can you?
Tom,
Yes.
Mark Strange,
Yeah.
Steve,
Yes.
Mark Gold,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
All right, great. That's that. I guess we will go to the audit correction report. Paul Pasterzik.
Okay, this audit correction report goes back actually to the, it should say the FY 2019 management letter. There were a number of issues that were brought up in that management letter. The first one I had brought to the attention of the board back in March, dealing with the classification of two enterprise funds that we operate, one being the solid waste recycling enterprise and the stormwater enterprise. The auditors raised the concern because of the high tax subsidy that is funding each one of those enterprise funds. And as a board, it was agreed that we were going to eliminate the solid waste recycling enterprise fund by the end of this fiscal year, so that in FY 22, it would be accounted for in the general fund, mainly because, again, the small revenues generated within the fund, we're only making up 20% of the full revenues of the fund, and the general fund tax subsidy made up about 80. We also had discussion on the stormwater enterprise fund. The board had voted minimally a policy that would increase the funding levels of the stormwater fees as a percentage of the total stormwater costs. And we've gradually been doing that. And it was elected that we would keep that stormwater enterprise fund as is, and that will correct itself over time as the general fund subsidy decreases over that same time frame. So I will have a warrant article on the October warrant to abandon the solid waste recycling enterprise fund, and that should take care very much so of this audit finding from last fiscal year's audit. Another issue that was brought up dealt with IT controls, backups, retention, formal process, review of policies, and so on and so forth. I got a note from Nick George back in early July regarding a response to this. Basically, we've been doing some training regarding phishing awareness of staff that we all had online training to go through. Additional training would be added if people, I don't want to say, if they responded to certain phishing emails that were sent to them as kind of little test matters. Also, a Maya grant was awarded for the purpose of network vulnerability detection. That equipment has been installed, and the vendor is conducting some network analysis as we go on. And I'm not sure if Nick has that final report yet regarding that network analysis. With regard to backups for the Munis system, backups are done regularly now on a daily basis. They are done remotely, and logs are automatically kept, and logs are automatically sent to email staff for direct review and action if required. Those backups are also tested regularly. Then we were also required, because we didn't really have a password policy to get into the town systems. They did come up with a structured of so many letters, characters, numbers, capitals that had to be involved. So that was put into place for those individuals who had what were defined as weak passwords that were in place. They had to be modified. And then finally, there was some new network equipment that was in, new network equipment that was going to be installed for further segmentation of our programs. Some of them were on the same server. These will, if they're segmented further, it would eliminate kind of the potential of malware infection. Should one server get infected, it would only have a limited number of programs that it could possibly impact. So that information came from Nick George back in early July. I see that Pete Landon, who is chair of the audit committee, is on here also. And again, this was gone over with the audit committee back, I believe, in early July also. With regard to number 3, which dealt with the performing of the student activity audit funds, those student activity audits were just done over at the school department for the 5 schools that do have run student activities. I do have copies of those audits now in my hand. I have not had a chance to review them, but that audit has been completed, and the audit reports were issued to the school department. Lastly, there was an issue with, or a recommendation that the accounting department do a subsequent review of the treasurer's bank reconciliations. After the treasurer's office were through with them, we ran into a snafu as we changed assistant town accountants maybe about 1.5 years ago. We were a little bit behind. We are now basically caught up. We are just waiting to do the June 30th of 2020 review. That one normally takes a little bit longer because it's the end of the fiscal year. But we are basically right on target to keep those on target and remain on target going into FY21. And finally, I will just say that the FY20 audit did start it actually started a little while ago with some internal questionnaires that were sent to certain departments. The auditors were on site last Monday for a 1-day internal control inspection of procurement processes. And they're now expected back after we close out the book, sometimes to the mid to the latter part of September.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Any questions from the board on that? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to number 5 on new business, which is the Eversource. Yes.
One thing on the report,
Sure.
there's some unanswered questions that we're looking forward to hearing back from the school department, which manages the IT function. They've answered surveys for the past 2 years that say that the technology committee is responsible for IT oversight, and it'll set up plans, priorities, and an annual IT budget. And they answered the survey, no, they don't do that. IT is evaluated regularly for risks, and any identified risks are appropriately addressed. They answered 2 years in a row, no to that. Outside providers used by the entity are evaluated to determine those who provide material financial services that may impact controls, and they answered no to that. A backup plan and data retention policy exists, and they answered no to that. And interfaces between systems, anyway, controller, assessor, etc., and the answer are accurate transfer of data. No. So, we've gone over and sat down with the superintendent and Tom Azzett twice and the audit committee, and we've thrown the ball back at Lynn to a degree, and I went so far as to recommend that maybe the memorandum of understanding we have the school department be reconsidered. There's a whole administrative code called 1.0. And if you go down it calls for an advisory committee, which is established and it's listed in all our advisory committees, and it has never been formed. And either we gotta clean this stuff up or, take it out of the demands. That's what the school department was supposed to do. And, but all the good stuff to talk about, those things are getting some traction. And, you know, the whole pushing program, the passwords, and everything that, if you're in a professional company, are done, but also the planning and the budgeting and the advisory committee with all the experts we have in town. I don't understand it. It's beyond my comprehension. So that's the audit committee, you know, additional comments.
Okay, and Peter, when was that questionnaire filled out by the school department?
We're getting, like Paul just said, there's a third one coming in, and one was 12 months ago and 12 months before that.
Right. So again, I guess some of that would have been taken care of with Nick's response, maybe not all of it. Probably the biggest issue is, you know, are we going to have an IT committee or not? There was an IT committee that was actually appointed. They actually just never met many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can comment quickly.
Go ahead, let's go.
No, just I know this was on one of the agendas back in the fall, or there was conversation about this right after I started. And in February, myself, Paul Pasterzik, Tom Mazza, and the superintendent and the IT director started meeting to go through the IT service level agreement and make some updates to that. I think the committee was listed in there as well as being one of the outcomes of that. And we did make some good efforts towards that. And then everything got put to the side to respond to COVID. As we look forward to the capital planning efforts, and I've started to look at some of the software and technology needs of the departments, and to try to streamline and coordinate a little bit better, because I've got departments that are, you know, making specific IT requests without thinking about whether or not there's something already at use in another department that they maybe could utilize and just get a license for. So this is on my radar, and I plan to address it as some time becomes available. I've talked with the IT director to coordinate better on this. This was just last week, actually. And both him and I plan to set aside a bunch of time in the fall once the remote learning gets set back up and they, you know, feel like they're at a point where I can take some of his time. But my first priority is making sure that the schools can reopen. And then I'll address with him the rest of the department needs. But I'm well aware of this, and it's on my radar to address.
I don't think it's on Lynn's nickel. This goes back 2 years, and that I don't think it's also, I think Nick George, everything on the reports I get, if you talk to John Dearborn, he says he does a great job. He's on top of things. It's not a staff level administrator problem. The administrator problem is at the school department. And that's the way I see it. And, you know, I haven't talked so frankly about it, but when you go into your third year of no action, you got to wonder. And I asked John Dearborn when I made a few phone calls on my own, and I said, where are the biggest security issues for the town? He said that two of them are, one is the server material is all down next to the boiler in the high school. And there's a possibility of that whole area, because the water and all the connections to the boilers is literally right next to the server room. And it's so hot, they have to bring in special air conditioning equipment to do it. So that's an issue. And the second one, he said that the fiber lines that we have extending around the town and we're expanding are exposed. So if you wanted to cut off communications with police, fire, emergency, all you got to do is locate one of those and clip them. I don't think that's easily solved, but I think the server thing sitting next to the boilers in the high school has been there for a long time. And it's not on the capital planning projects to improve.
All right. Well, Peter, I think that we appreciate your comments, and this is a pretty good indication for the viewers listening of how the audit committee, you know, tries to keep the town in good shape and But I agree that, I know that Nick George has been doing a great job with trying to keep us from getting in trouble with the internet. And we've all the select board members have had to take classes and so forth. But yeah, well, good. I'm glad, Lynn, that you're stepping up to move a little further on this. And then, I don't know at what point how the select board could help you guys with this process. But,
Well, you can look at Administrative Code 1.0 and look at what's in there. And then you wrote it and signed at the select board and 2011. And it spells out everything. I didn't make up those requirements. They're all in an administrative code, which is part of the mandate of the town.
All right, great. Any comments from the select board? Mark Cole?
Yeah, actually it was Jen Jester and I who put that together, Peter, and you're right. We've never had the IT department or the school committee, and I'll speak frankly here too, adopt the use of an IT committee for oversight. That was one of the agreements that we had as part of IT consolidation and moving it under the school department rather than under the town. And it's never been completed, but we're going to talk openly here, and I know this is an open meeting, but we still have the school department that's not in compliance with our charter regarding their finance department. And so if they're blatantly not in compliance with their finance department, how are we going to get them to be in compliance with the IT function and getting an IT committee? And the answer is the budget. I think the select board needs to use the power of our budget control to get action. I appreciate the fact that Lynn's gonna, it's on her agenda and she'd like to take care of it, but it's been, 10 years that this IT group is running without an IT committee as oversight. We have a lot of people in town who are extraordinarily knowledgeable in IT and could do an awful lot to help, kind of like we've got a Parks and Rec committee helping our Parks and Rec department. We've got an adult center committee helping our adult center. Why we don't have an IT committee helping our IT department? They're supposed to approve the budget and review the budget, all that kind of stuff. I agree with Peter. It's long past due, and we need to do something about it. And I suggest we, give Lynn a little bit more time to take action on it. She's a new sheriff in town, but if it's not done, we ought to step up.
I want to give our independent auditor credit. She's the one who initiated this survey 2 years ago, the land sending company. And so the whole discussion came the fact that a financial audit, in her opinion, because of what IT has become in our society, has to be also an IT cybersecurity audit. But they don't perform that itself. So one of the things when I sat down, and Paul Pastergic and all of us sat down with Nick George at times, we went over the fact that of what these requirements are, and he definitely understands the field well and is capable of, with the proper people supervising him and setting up the administrative part.
Okay, great. Can we move on to other board members? Mark Strange, any comments?
No comments.
Okay. Steve Morantz?
No comments.
Richard Foster?
Yeah, the only comment I got, Tom, is it's not the first time it's been brought to the board's attention.
Mm-hmm. All right. So then we should, I don't know, I guess we'll have to put it on.
Nick George went to the state provides a free advice and counsel on how to do everything. They're so concerned about municipalities getting hacked. We haven't read about one for a month or two, but Chicopee went down the tubes and paid a ransom, to get their whole systems back. Paul has assured us that we're safe in that whole regard, but there is this whole cybersecurity situation that's out there, and the state will do a lot of things for you these days, and Nick knows all about them. Has applied for some grants. So, I mean, there is hope. on the horizon here, but I think what's going on in general in society with COVID and other things, that you can't do it all at once, but I gotta raise this up the flagpole. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, great. And yes, you know, it is a very important issue, especially now that we're going to have more and more people doing remote learning and using computers, and we have to make sure our system isn't going to go down. You know, with a regular school, people call in bomb threats and, you know, try to get the day off. And, you know, if we get hackers in here, we're going to have big problems. So yes, you know, it's an important need. And so we'll follow up when Lynn has a little more time to get into it, and we'll see what we can do to help the audit committee get their work done. We appreciate all the work you guys do. Okay, so we'll let's move on to the next thing we could look at is the Bay State Gas, Columbia Gas Eversource letter regarding the gas sale from Eversource Purchasing Columbia. And
could we defer this conversation to the executive session? Is that possible?
I would be more than willing to do that. Hopefully we'll be in executive session soon. Is that okay with the board? Because I think we'll have other issues.
It's appropriate, yeah.
Okay, so let's do that. The other thing is, the only thing, a couple things left. I think that given the time, I think we should move talk about the update on liaison assignments and the overhead wire discussion to another evening. But I would like to get to the town manager's report, and I think that would pretty much, we'll hit all the items on the agenda. If anyone thinks I missed something, let me know. But why don't we go to the town manager's report?
Okay, thank you. Give me 1 second. I will make it very quick. Let's see, sorry. So I just wanted to provide you a quick update about tropical storm cleanup. At the writing of this report, there was no update, no decision yet on a townwide cleanup. Today, I went and viewed the damage that happened at the transfer station over the weekend with the grass clippings catching fire, and the fire that we had over there on late Saturday night into Sunday morning. Cleanup's pretty much done. The transfer station will reopen again tomorrow for those extended days. That being said, this is the last week we are looking at doing those extended days, and beginning Monday, we will be starting the townwide cleanup. I will have more information towards the end of the week on exactly what that's going to look like, what section of town we're starting in, and what path we're going to follow. Considered doing the reverse of what the trash pickup schedule is, so that we follow some similar route like that. But I'll release that information later this week once we have it developed. We do, as part of this, I would like to have a conversation. It doesn't need to be tonight, but sometime very soon, about what our policy or plans may be as we have more of these types of storms. This is not an item we have budgeted for a townwide storm cleanup. If we're going to continue to do this, we should look at budgeting for that. And I've talked to Paul Kosterzik about it as we look forward to the FY22 budget. But I guess I would like to have a conversation with the board, and maybe we could do this at a different meeting to figure out what we should do as the town, what the expectations are, what we want residents doing, just so that we're all clear moving forward, who's going to do what and when, and then budget for it. So moving on from there, the building permit software, the online permit link has launched. Residents can now go online and apply for permits. The online payment option is still being worked out, but that should be ready in a few weeks. But you can go and apply for a permit online now. There's a link on the homepage, right at the top of the homepage on the left-hand side. The Knollwood sidewalk project is pretty much complete. I put some pictures there in the report. It went fairly well. There was nothing important to report. They're going to loam and seed it, and then it should be done. Wolf Swamp Fields went out to bid. At the writing of this report, bids were due on August 20th. However, we issued an addendum to it and we kicked the date out one more week. So bids are now due August 26th. The second phase of LED streetlight project is complete. If you've noticed an issue with any of the lights that were installed in your area, you can email publicworks@longmeadow.org or give the DPW a call and we can take a look at it. Still working out a couple of the little issues that we had, but really nothing substantial at all. So that project is wrapping up and pretty much complete. Westcom, State 911 has awarded Westcom a $2.6 million development grant and a $2.3 million support and incentive grant. The development grant will cover the town community assessments and money for renovation of a new facility. That is still ongoing, that conversation about Salter College. Let's see, Morningside Drive culvert replacement project. That work has, we've selected a contractor, Aqualine Utility. They are going to be starting the first week in September, but they've started some erosion control and sedimentation controls this week actually. And this week, I intend to submit it's called a META grant. It's a Municipal Energy Technical Assistance Grant through Green Communities Division. I reached out to Select Board Member Mark Gold, the town engineer also assisted, and members of the Energy Sustainability Commission have also helped me out with this. This was a short turnaround on this grant. It's due on Thursday morning, so I really thank these residents for helping me and the town engineer for helping me pull this together. What we're looking to do is apply for funding for a feasibility analysis, conceptual level clean energy plan, and a high level business case for a community shared solar project at what will be the old DPW site. I expect we'll hear something on this in September because I think they're trying to get these done quickly. And I will report back to the board if we're successful in that. And if you've gone by Town Hall at all lately, you may have noticed some work that's been happening there. This is part of an Eagle Scout project. The decommissioned World War II memorial has been removed. The flag will remain, but the other concrete has been removed and some plantings will be placed once the work is done. That is the extent of my report.
Okay, great. Any questions or comments? Mark Strange?
No.
Okay. Steve Morantz?
No.
Mark Gold?
Quick question. I just want to thank you, Lynn, for the decision on pickup from the storm damage. There's a lot of stuff along the tree belt still that needs to be done. But bigger question is, there's a lot of information in the news about voting and voting by mail and things like that. Do we need any additional resources for Kathy Ingram to, turn around 2 quick elections in a row, one in September and one back in November? You think we've got all that staffing taken care
of? Stuffing ballots has been a multi-department effort. Everyone's taken turns in the town hall meeting room to stuff envelopes and get those ballots out in the mail. I will certainly check in with Kathy to make sure we're fully prepared for November. I do think most people, it appears at this point, have been selecting all elections this year. So there won't be that initial influx of applications for November. We'll already have those on file, but I'm sure there'll be some new challenge that we're not thinking of at this point. But I can certainly report back and let you know. But we want to make sure that runs as smoothly as possible, for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Richard Foster?
Yeah, good job, Len. And by the way, I'm willing to come in and work anytime you would like help down there with a mask. I can help stuff envelopes any day.
And in the future, I think
in the future, I'd like to open up a dialogue with the possibility of increased volunteer services when we have a major event like this. There's a lot of areas where we could have volunteers working that wouldn't interconnect too much with DPW for preliminary cleanup. A lot of good opportunities for community development. We got a lot of citizens that would be willing to be out there and work. You say you need help tomorrow?
Yeah, I was going to take you up on it, but I will definitely do that. I was just giving you a hard time.
Okay, well, when you're ready, give me a call, please. That's
I
it, Tom.
definitely will. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. The only comment I have regard to the report is Westcom. We look at, in some parts of the country, they're defunding the police. They're trying to find better ways to address a lot of the mental health issues that police officers have to deal with, and a lot of the social service kinds of issues. And I guess, at some point we may want to look at how we might be able to address some of this at Westcom. We have officers there, we have firefighters, but maybe we need a seasoned mental health professional who could really understand some of what is going on in that room and dealing with. I know they triage the calls to 911, but from 911 to different police operatives and so forth. But it might be interesting to see if there'd be room to open a discussion about that, because so many police calls are involved, people with a mental health crisis, and right now I know that because of COVID and families being together, the number of hospitalizations for mental health issues has increased. Therapists are just busier. I know myself, 25 years, I've never been this busy. And I think that having mental health professionals, involved in Westcamp might be something I'd like to discuss a little further in some way. Maybe we'll talk about it offline. So that's it for me. So the last thing on our agenda would be select board comments. And then we will go into executive session. So we can
Are we going to do anything about that Columbia Gas? Oh, we're going to do that in the executive session. Okay.
I thought we would do it the next one, unless I was trying to get to that, and I guess we didn't. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you want to try to address that? I think we're moving it. That's the one we're moving to executive session, Mark.
Right.
So we're going to address it in executive session, not in public session. So that leaves us select board comments. And Mark, do you have any select board comments?
Yeah, the only follow-up last time I talked about, was there anything we could do for residents who are, impacted by the COVID-19, whether through job loss or whatever. And, it's interesting. I sent a couple of letters off to people like our state representative, state senator, and it turns out that, Longmeadow is one of the very few towns in the Commonwealth that have quarterly tax bills. Almost everybody else is semi-annual tax bills. And so, job loss hasn't impacted anybody because there's not too many bills due in other communities. But the general indication was that the governor gave us pretty broad range to do things. And so even though in the past we couldn't, there's some thought by at least Senator Lesser's staff that we might have some latitude. And so I'd like to maybe take a look at that a little closer in one of our upcoming meetings.
Okay, yes, I know we didn't have any time in this agenda, but thank you. Richard Foster, any comments?
No, I don't have anything else, Tom.
Okay, Mark Strange?
No comment.
Okay, Steve Morantz?
No comments.
Okay, the only thing as a select board comment, is that this is August, our last meeting in August, and this month is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. It was in August 1920 that women were given the right to vote for the first time. There's a suffragette activist, Annie McTeer, who was the first African-American in the city of Springfield, who was female, who registered to vote. We also look at this as the 200th birthday of Susan B. Anthony. And there is a display at the Demore Museum of Fine Arts in Springfield about women in the move. So I don't know if they're allowed to go down there, but congratulations to women. It's been 100 years this August. and their ability to vote and obtain suffrage. So I would look for a motion to move into executive session in accordance with Mass Law General Chapter 30, Section 21A, to discuss strategy to regard to anticipated litigation relative to the new DPW facility, Pride Limited Partnerships, and the gas related matters, discussion of which in open meeting may have detrimental effect to the litigation position of the town, and the chair so declares, not to reconvene into open session. Also approved, and the vote on minutes from June 24th, 2020 and July 6th, 2020. Can someone forward this motion?
So moved by Richard Foster.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, by Steve Morantz. And Deb, will you take a roll call vote?
Tom,
Yes.
Mark Strange,
Yeah.
Steve,
Yes.
Mark Gold,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for watching. It was a pretty exciting meeting, a lot of stuff packed in. And we will see you next in September. And the date on that is not the first, but the
September 8th.
September 8th. Okay, so we'll see you then. Good evening.